Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Greek Mythology. I opened a treasure chest at Olympus. Chapter 61. This sword. When Apollo pulled out the rusty sword, Zeus's eyes stared sharply in the infinite lightning. The vast and unparalleled authority of the god-king also trembled. The mottled long sword is ordinary in style, with a dirty rust color throughout. If it is found on the side of the road, even mortals will dismiss it. But when Apollo held it high, the whole world shuddered. Like a rabbit meets a wolf, a fox meets a hunter. This is the enemy of the world. Buzz. The mottled rust sword trembled in the void, and the whole body suddenly appeared red like magma. The slender blade is like a red-hot iron, burning with scorching fire. Not only is it burning, minus the world is burning too. The sky, the earth, the ocean, the Hades. The temperature of the entire world has risen a lot at this moment. As if to be set on fire. The gods stared at the burning blade in awe, with trembling eyes. I saw Apollo holding his sword high, and the burning light slashed towards Zeus in the sky. Zeus's face changed wildly, and he hurriedly activated the authority of the god-king. In the name of the king of the gods, the space freezes, and winter comes. He tried to use his authority to freeze the space and extinguish the burning. But he was horrified to find that when the burning long sword was held high for a moment, the authority of the supreme god-king in the past was suppressed like a nemesis. Although the space has solidified a little, the icy winter has also come. But when the burning crimson sword light swept away, the condensed space turned to the fragile glass, and it shattered in an instant. In the severe cold winter, in the monstrous fire, the blink of an eye rose and burned. The crimson sword light, with unstoppable force, penetrated into Zeus's chest. As the gods watched, a small hole appeared in the spacious chest of the king of the gods. A bright red spring of divine blood gushed out. "You actually hurt me." Zeus let out a roar like a beast, thunder flashed all over his body, and bright electric lights shrouded the sky, forming a huge divine punishment. At the same time, the power of the god-king was pushed to an unprecedented extreme, and the stalwart figure was like a boundless sky, crushing the earth heavily. And when he did it, the long sword in Apollo's hand burned more and more violently. A monstrous fire spread from him, burning the surrounding void and burning himself. This is the price to pay for using the burning sword. Because this is the real artifact of destruction, that is, to destroy the enemy, but also to destroy yourself. Zeus, let me see whether you can't bear the backlash of the authority of the god-king first, or whether I will be burned to the ground first. Holding the burning sword in his hand tightly, Apollo's eyes flickered with golden light, full of surging fighting intent. With a monstrous fighting spirit, he pushed the power of the flaming sword to the top. The sky, the earth, the ocean, the underworld, all trembled and vibrated. Like a lit candle, the temperature rose, and the matter melted. One after another, the burning sword energy rushed towards Zeus, who was rushing. Boom, boom, boom. The burning power of destruction and the authority of the supreme god-king collided with the sky, and a black hole was torn open in the sky and the earth. Tens of thousands of miles of heaven and earth turned to ashes in the blink of an eye. Apollo's golden eyes were firm, and the flame of the burning sword was even more prosperous. Zeus gritted his teeth, unwilling to admit defeat like this, and once again urged the authority of the god-king. Blurred red dots gradually appeared on his body, penetrating into his soul. This is the backlash of fate. But he couldn't care less. War. This can only be ended by destroying the opponent in front of him. Boom. The rushing thunder and lightning and the burning light are intertwined again. The terrifying fluctuations made the whole world gloomy. A sense of doomsday reverberated in the hearts of every god. In the depths of the earth and the underworld, the awakened primordial gods frowned and exerted their divine power to stabilize the stability of the world. If they can spare their hands, they will immediately come forward to stop this battle. But the deep-level power of the two fighting secretly shook the whole world. If no one moves to stabilize it, the sky will collapse, the earth will shatter, the ocean will dry up, and the universe will die. Several primordial gods had to hold back while guarding and watching the battle. In the ocean and the underworld, the two kings flew out very fast, anxious to rush to the fierce battlefield. What a fierce battle! Zeus, is this your strength? Katakana middle dot 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 katakana middle dot. Haha, I hope you won't be defeated by your son. After all, I've been waiting for a long time. If I don't face you when I kill Olympus, then I will be very disappointed. In a dark valley, a hideous monster with 100 heads suddenly let out a cold whisper. He has a full 200 eyes, and at the same time stares out into the sky with a treacherous light. A majestic and profound filthy aura lingered around his gigantic body. He is the young son of the earth and the abyss, the embodiment of the hurricane, the source of all filth, and the father of all demons, Typhon. Bang! In the fierce confrontation again, Apollo and Zeus shook. One is bathed in firelight, the other is stained with red dots of fate. The breath is weak and wilted to the extreme. But the two had absolutely no intention of giving up. They all stared at each other with cold eyes. One more move, let's completely decide the winner. Zeus no longer called Apollo the renegade son, and a series of battles made him deeply aware. The bright blonde figure in front of him was the strongest threat to shake his rule. There is no room for that. Only by destroying him can he defend the majesty of the king of the gods. Exactly what I want, the last sword to end your life. Apollo drank coldly, and the flames burning on his body became more fiery. At this moment, one blue and one black, two burly figures tore apart the aftermath of their battle and drilled into the space between them. You can't go on any longer, otherwise the whole world will collapse. Hades, the king of the underworld, stared at the two confronting people with dark eyes. Poseidon also roared. Zeus, what is the real secret of the power of the god king? You know better than us. Excessive use will bring terrible consequences, you also know better than me. Apollo, put down the sword in your hand, its flame will burn everything. The two kings kept giving advice in a low voice. But Zeus just sneered. What qualifications do you have to discipline me? Let me get out of the way. He was about to urge the authority of the king of God again. Suddenly a soft voice came from outside. They are not qualified to discipline you, should I be? Mother God. Zeus turned his head in surprise. Accompanied by the eldest sister, Hestia, the goddess of the stove, a woman wearing a light green long dress, with a peaceful and beautiful air, stared at herself with sad eyes. It was his mother, the goddess of the second-generation god King Cronus, the goddess Rhea. He quickly suppressed the divine power in his body, lowered his head and greeted, Mother God, why are you here? You make such a big move, can I not be alarmed? Goddess Rhea rubbed her eyes and let out a sad sob. The three Zeus brothers stood there awkwardly. At this time, Rhea looked at Apollo, who was still burning with flames, and said in a distressed tone, You are the little Apollo, put away the flames and show the grandmother of God. While she was talking, she walked up to Zeus, and wept bitterly. Why did I help you to overthrow your brutal father? It's because I don't want to see you being persecuted by him, I want to see your brothers safe. Support each other, get close to each other, and love each other even more when you have a child, and never repeat the old way of him and my father. You all promised to be straightforward at the time, why are you doing more than your father God now? She looked at Zeus with grief. The king of the gods dodged his eyes, not daring to face his mother's eyes. At this time, the eldest sister of the three kings, Hestia, the goddess of the stove, came over and said, Mother, let them put away their divine power first and leave here to talk. Goddess Rhea reacted. Sadly, he said to Zeus and Apollo, We are all family, why can't we sit down and talk? Come, put away the artifacts. Zeus and Apollo looked at each other coldly. Zeus thought to himself, This kid's sword is really powerful, but my plan is about to be completed, so I don't rush to clean him up now, and I'll talk about it when I get to the original realm. Apollo's mind turned at the same time. The backlash of the burning sword is too strong, even if I kill Zeus now, I will burn to the ground. Stop this battle first, wait for new treasures to be opened from the treasure chest, strengthen yourself, and then deal with him. After a moment of hesitation, the two put away the artifacts. Rhea, Hestia, Poseidon, and Hades breathed a sigh of relief. Well, that makes it look like a family. Rhea walked peacefully between the two. Several people walked out of the collapsed void and came to the outside world. Hey, the battle is over. The King of God and the God of Light are both here, His Majesty Hades, Poseidon, and the goddess Rhea. It seems that this battle has finally stopped, and there is no winner or loser. The gods exchanged whispers. Immediately, the silhouettes of gods flew from far away. Hera, goddess of agriculture; Demeter, goddess of agriculture; Athena, goddess of wisdom; Ares, god of war; Hermes, messenger of the gods; Themis, goddess of justice. When these gods came here, they all said hello to Rhea first. At this time, Hera walked to Zeus and said in a sad tone, "My god king, the wound on your chest is so serious." Everyone turned their attention to the hole pierced by the flaming sword of Zeus. Zeus sneered and looked at Apollo. "Who made me give birth to a disobedient son? This is the retribution I deserve." "That's right, it's the retribution you deserve." Artemis also came, stroking the wounds on Apollo's body. Zeus was furious and scolded. "Artemis, you are more frivolous than your brother. I want you to understand what the wrath of thunder is. Really, I want to see how much power you have left." Apollo stood in front of Zeus coldly. "Are your brothers and sisters going to rebel against your father god, the great king of the gods?" Hera's eyes flickered, and she scolded coldly. "Sister, things have become embarrassing, so don't provoke them." Hestia, the goddess of the stove, suddenly walked to Hera. And the goddess Rhea also hurriedly walked between Apollo and Zeus, and said sadly, "Why are you making such a fuss again?" At this time, Athena, who had been silent all the time, suddenly said, "Grandmother Rhea, in my opinion, this series of events were caused by the contradiction between Apollo and Helios, which triggered everything that followed. Why don't you ask goddess Themis to sort out everything from the beginning to the end and do a trial?" Athena is right, these things do need a fair conclusion. Demeter also agreed. Whatever is done, Apollo contradicts the father god, and he should be beaten into Tartarus. Ares shouted loudly. But he just finished speaking. Except Zeus, everyone else stared at him with idiot-like eyes. He timidly shrank back. Then Rhea looked at the goddess of justice. "Sister Themis, your justice is recognized by the gods, so please judge this series of things clearly." When calling Sister Themis, Rhea's face showed a touch of embarrassment. The goddess of justice Themis is the eldest and most majestic of the 6 goddesses of the 12 Titans. And she is actually the youngest sister. But later Themis married his son Zeus and became his second wife, giving birth to the 3 goddesses of destiny and the 3 goddesses of timing. Although the two soon separated, the sisters undoubtedly felt a lot more uncomfortable when they met. In fact, this is nothing. Some time ago, when it was reported that her mother Gaia gave birth to a child for her son Poseidon, Rhea was even more at a loss. Stared at by the gods, blindfolded with a white cloth, holding the scale in one hand and the sword in the other, Themis, the dignified and solemn goddess of justice, finally spoke. All this happened because Helios offended Apollo. Now that Helios and his sister are punished, I won't say more. Apollo is the chief god of Olympus, and Helios is also a god of extraordinary rank. Regarding the rules of Olympus, Apollo, you don't have the right to dispose of him and his sister, but this is their initiative to offend you, so you can only retaliate. Quote, "As the king of the gods, Zeus' orders should be obeyed by every god. But Apollo disobeyed his orders, which is also a sin." Hearing this, Zeus and Hera had satisfied smiles on their faces. At this time, Themis's voice suddenly changed. "Zeus, as the king of the gods, you did not ask the reason, and when you saw Apollo, you directly forced him to admit punishment, which led to the subsequent conflicts and wars, and the aftermath shook the whole world. This is also wrong. For this whole thing, both of you must take responsibility and be punished." "You want me to punish?" Zeus seemed to have heard a joke, his eyes glared at Themis. But the goddess of justice ignored his gaze, just like her blindfolded eyes. Blindfolding is to avoid being deceived by any illusions and private feelings in the world. Understand everything with a just heart and make the most just disposal. With a solemn face, the goddess of justice softly pronounced the sentence. "Apollo, you have counterattacked too much and disobeyed the king of gods, when you were not allowed to set foot on Olympus for 1,000 years, and stay in the temple of the mortal world. Zeus, you are the king of the gods, no one is qualified to punish you, but fate will give you a catastrophe. The verdict of Themis was over, and all the gods present frowned. For thousands of years, you are not allowed to set foot on Olympus, fate bestows catastrophe. What punishment is this? The goddess of justice is also with mud. The gods thought so. Zeus calmed down, glanced at Artemis coldly, and shouted, you are also not allowed to step into Olympus for 1,000 years. Artemis ignored him completely, and only carefully cleaned the wounds on Apollo's body. Since Sister Themis has made a ruling, let's just let this go. Goddess Rhea smiled. The gods present nodded. It is wonderful that a great war that shook the whole world could end like this. Only Ares wanted to show his presence in the crowd, but was caught by Hestia, the goddess of the stove, and dragged to an unknown place. Hades and Poseidon took a deep look at Zeus and Apollo, said goodbye to Rhea, and turned to the ocean and Hades respectively. Zeus and Hera flew into the air with a cold face. Themis, Hermes and other gods followed him and left. Athena showed a smile to Apollo and left. Only Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, accompanied Rhea, and smiled at Apollo. I said earlier that I would have time to visit my mother together, but I didn't expect to see it. Rhea looked at Apollo and Artemis lovingly, and sighed, you two children are really miserable, it's all your father's fault, I must talk about him later. Apollo chuckled lightly and said, the grandmother of God, don't worry about the affairs of our juniors. Our own affairs will always be solved by ourselves. Seeing his appearance, Rhea couldn't help sighing. You are like this, our brothers and father were like this back then, and Zeus and my husband were like this too, this is an unavoidable fate. This noble goddess's face was full of deep helplessness. Demeter interjected. Mother, Apollo is not seriously injured, let him rest first, let's go back first. Rhea nodded and said to Apollo, when you rest well, you must come to God's grandmother with your sister. Apollo and Artemis nodded. Rhea and Demeter flew into the distance. After they all left, Apollo looked at the backs of them leaving, and sighed softly, this is not our destiny, but some people can't let go of their power. A coward who holds his own throne. Don't say it, let me handle your injury properly. Artemis stroked his pale face, her clear eyes full of pity. Go to my temple. Apollo looked at Delphi in the distance. Great God of light, you are the brightest star in the vast sky, you are the Lord of mercy and discernment, your splendor will surely walk in the sky, in the earth, in the sea, and in the hearts of all spirits. Hearing the pious prayers of the familiar girl, Apollo put a smile on the corner of his mouth, looking at the majestic temple in front of him and the statue with a blurred face. Tekasha, why didn't you carve my face out? He asked. There has never been a craftsman in the world who can sculpt 1/10,000th of your spirit. Tekasha replied softly, her bright eyes fixed on the figure she had missed for many years in front of her eyes. Apollo turned to look at Chiron. Your performance today was heroic, he praised. Chiron smiled and tapped his eyebrows with his right fist. Thank you for your compliment, if you hadn't taught me the practice of fighting chi, I wouldn't have been in a stalemate with Helios for so long. It's your own ability to light up the stars so quickly. Apollo chuckled, I set up a constellation angel in the Church of Light, and you will be the head of the Sagittarius constellation angels in the future. As he spoke, he took out a pair of golden bows and arrows and handed them to Chiron. Artemis was surprised. Isn't this your bow and arrow? She touched the silver bow on her body. The two sets of bows and arrows were made together. It's just a high-grade artifact, it's useless to me now. Thank you for your gift. Chiron took the bow and arrow from Apollo. He is the best archer who knows how to use bows and arrows. He has been improving his martial chi cultivation, but he has not been able to find a bow and arrow that fits his hand. Now that I got Apollo's golden bow, I couldn't put it down. Apollo looked at Tekasha again and said softly, your bravery today is also worthy of recognition. This is also the artifact I used before. He took out the golden sun sword. Tekasha's clear eyes were extremely dazzling, and she excitedly took over the golden sword of the sun. Thank you for your gift. Now all of Delphi are your believers. Do you want to meet them? We'll cover the whole of Delphi with your glory. Before Tekasha finished speaking, Artemis glared at her. She said in a cold tone, clean up the temple and let him rest first. This hunting goddess is so fierce, she can't tell it's his sister at all. Tekasha was startled, and hurriedly walked to the temple with Chiron. After they left, the coldness on Artemis' face disappeared immediately, and he said to Apollo in a very gentle tone, "You should rest well now, and stop doing other things." Apollo nodded. Soon the temple was ready. Artemis stood outside and blocked the temple with divine power, allowing Apollo to rest assured. Looking at his sister who insisted on staying outside, Apollo's heart was full of warmth. This is the case with his sister, who always wants to do something for him, but always forgets to take good care of herself. At this moment, he suddenly remembered that the high-level treasure chest he had obtained from Demeter had not been opened in time. A little bit of magic was used to cover up the movement. He took out the treasure chest. After opening it, a voice immediately sounded in my mind. "Ding, you opened a high-level treasure chest, and obtained Origin Crystal 150, Blood of the Creator 1.95. The next moment, a drop of golden blood radiating scalding heat appeared in his palm. "Blood of the Creator," Apollo said in surprise. Looking at the sacred fluctuations in front of him, like golden blood droplets burning in flames, Apollo fell into contemplation. Creator, there are many copies in that game. For example, Mermd, the creator god of the world of gods in the etheric body, the original creator of the world of gods who took potions with a background similar to Cthulhu, and the originator of the Alago continent. I don't know where this is. Bit of blood. But no matter who it is, any existence that can be called a creator should not be lower in rank than the primordial gods like Mother Earth. Saying so, Apollo used his divine power to examine the golden blood drop in his hand. But when his divine power came into contact, the golden blood suddenly released a blazing light, like a flame, melting into Apollo's body. Apollo was a little surprised. This is when he suddenly felt a majestic and pure power rising from his body, with a fiery and sacred aura, spreading between his body and soul. Boom! Suddenly, a dazzling light radiated from his body. An incomparably sacred, supremely solemn and vast divine power emanated from him, covering the entire Delphi in the blink of an eye. As this breath sent by Apollo, Artemis, who was guarding outside the temple, couldn't help but stare at the temple beside him in amazement, with a hint of shock on his cheeks. In this breath, she sensed an unprecedented sense of sacredness and heaviness. Like an unborn child facing its parents. What's going on? Why do I feel like I'm seeing my old father who's been dead for so many years? I want to cry. Do you feel this way? I feel the solemn gospel lingering in my ears, and the soul is being baptized. I don't know why, but I feel warm all over, and the old problems of many years are gone. What a miracle! This must be the gift of the God of Light. In every place in Delphi, under the faint divine might, many people couldn't help but feel incomparably solemn in their hearts. Worship looking at the majestic temple in the center of the city-state. A dazzling divine light emanated from there, shrouded in the hearts of each of them. Originally, due to the various events of the day, the terrifying battle between the gods, and the tense and confused spirit, it was like being in the warm sun, quiet and relaxed. Everyone involuntarily leaned down, raised their right fists, tapped between their eyebrows, and recited reverently. Great God of light, you are the brightest star in the vast sky, you are the Lord of mercy and discernment, your splendor will surely walk in the sky, in the earth, in the sea, and in the hearts of all spirits. Praise the light. Listening to the bursts of prayers outside, Apollo suddenly opened his golden eyes and looked at the surroundings full of mystery. The world in the eyes of gods is often different from that of mortals. The eyes of mortals can only see the appearance of things formed by the refraction of light, while the gods can see through the small composition of each thing, and even the laws and rules in it. Apollo had a trick called sun vision, which was a magical technique that could observe things more deeply. Turning on the sun vision, and fighting against the gods, Apollo can detect the changes in the divine power in the opponent's body and judge the opponent's next moment's actions. It can be said that it is a very powerful perception magic. But after merging into that drop of golden divine blood at this moment, the world he can see is much wider and vaster than before. Looking at the slate on the ground, his mind automatically came to his mind that the material of this slate was mined from the mountain range, who mined it, including the craftsman who carved it. Looking at the wind flowing around him, he could know that it was the sea breeze from the Aegean current, who once brushed the hair of a wise man on the coast, and once brushed past an eagle in the sky. In the future, the wind will also flow from Delphi to Athens and to an island on the east coast. It would blow over the head of a fish jumping out of the waves, which would be caught by a fisherman 2 years later. The fisherman will meet a beautiful wife and bear him 3 sons, the youngest of whom will become a great merchant, and his 13th grandson will become a king. In an instant, from a slate and a gust of wind around him, Apollo saw the past, present and future. This is the all-seeing eye. The golden eyes flashed brightly, and Apollo looked solemn. The blood of the Creator did not improve his divine power much, but barely healed his wounds in the battle with Zeus. But it made his bloodline level rise a lot again, and at the same time gave him 2 new priesthoods. One is creation, and the other is combined with his original prophecy ministry to become the omniscient ministry. The omniscient eye is its external manifestation. These eyes can trace the past of anything and see the future of anything. Transcend time, transcend space, and penetrate all things in the universe. As long as the divine power is strong enough, you can see the chaotic nothingness before the creation of the world, and the final eternal scenery after the end of the years. As for creation, its most superficial application is to create things, transforming divine power into matter, but the real deep-level application is to create authority and priesthood. As we all know, each deity has only its own corresponding priesthood, and is omnipotent within the scope of its own authority, and other aspects are the same as ordinary people. Even if he is as powerful as Zeus, without using the authority of the king of gods, it will be unfavorable for him to use thunder to chop people, but let him roll the waves and guide the soul, he will not be able to do it de nuo jiao. Because he doesn't have that kind of authority. But the creation priesthood can temporarily create any kind of authority of existence, and its strength and effect are exactly the same as the original. Isn't this the Almighty? See? Apollo whispered, omniscient, plus Almighty, this is indeed the configuration of the Creator. It's just that what people say is omnipotent and omnipotent, which means that you can do whatever you think of, know everything, be omnipotent, and achieve everything, and the breadth and depth have reached the extreme. Here he is relatively strong in comprehensiveness, with breadth and depth, waiting for divine power to rise to a higher level. Touching his chin, he suddenly said, the authority of creation, the authority of the King of God should also be considered, right? Having said that, he couldn't help reaching out his hand, recalling what Zeus looked like when he activated the power of the King of Gods. An invisible force slowly condensed. Standing outside the temple, Artemis looked a little anxious. She could feel that Apollo's current state was very good, but the sudden divine might just now made her worry about what happened. Suddenly, a vast and majestic breath filled the temple, with an unparalleled domination and rule charm. Her pretty cheeks changed suddenly. God-King authority, with Zeus in it. Startled, she pushed open the door of the temple and broke into it. What he saw was a blonde figure with dazzling blonde hair and a thoughtful expression. Apollo, what happened? Artemis looked at his younger brother carefully and found that his gaseous state was very good. At the same time, he frowned slightly. Apollo's aura seems to have changed a bit, with a more sacred charm. Although he looked noble and elegant in the past, he didn't have such a heavy aura. And his eyes, as if they can see through everything I have, although he actually knows everything about me. Artemis couldn't help but look away. Apollo finally said, it's nothing, just recovered all the injuries on his body. Artemis nodded, thinking no more. As long as the younger brother's body has recovered to and is safe, it will be nothing. Sister, please bring my 2 believers in. Apollo asked. Artemis nodded. After she left, Apollo breathed a sigh of relief. Looking down at the palm of his hand, he frowned and said, the first time I used create, I failed, and it seems that I can only wait until the next time I face Zeus, and use my omniscient eyes to see the specific situation of the so-called God King's authority. In order to use this authority to create a corresponding authority, you need to have a full understanding of the authority to be created. It is not so difficult to understand other authorities. Only the authority of the King of God is very mysterious and elusive. Recalling the scene when he had just created the authority of the God King and was halfway through the creation, he frowned again. At that time, he traced it back with the eye of omniscience, and what he saw was that the authority of the King of God was linked with a huge net of dense chapters. The net is made up of countless threads, and there is a spinning wheel, which is constantly spinning new threads. What exactly is the authority of the King of God, and why is it able to dominate all things and suppress all authority? It must have something to do with fate, Apollo murmured. The omniscient eye allowed him to see many secrets that he had not discovered before, and to have a deep judgment on some things. Just as Artemis brought Chiron and Tecusha in, his eyes suddenly flashed and he looked out into the sky. Olympus. Zeus was sitting on the throne of the temple of the king of God. What just happened? Why did the backlash of fate caused by the excessive use of authority suddenly become more serious, as if someone else touched my authority? Roaring in his heart, he felt that something very bad had happened. Seeing his ugly expression, Hera, who was cleaning his wound next to him, suddenly sneered. If you had let me get rid of him, you wouldn't have the frown now. Hearing her sneer, Zeus shouted, "Is it because of my blocking at that time, or are you too incompetent? Every time is a complete failure. HMPH, you said that I failed, you planned for so long, and in the end you even shot it yourself, didn't you still fail?" Hera also sneered. Don't think I can't see it. Although Helios has a bad temper, he is not so reckless and ignorant. You let the three goddesses of fate influence him. Hey, fate. Hera's words made Zeus' face change. He raised his icy head and asked, how do you know so much? Why do I know this? Hera sneered suddenly. DB. Her glamorous cheeks and eyes flashed, revealing a cold air. I am your pillow, your closest god queen, do you think I don't know some of your secrets at all? There is no one in this world who knows better than me, my husband, my king. It seems that I have always underestimated you. Zeus lowered his voice, his face gloomy. For a long time, he thought that all the gods were in his control. But now he first missed Apollo, and now even Hera, the goddess who has never been in his eyes, has shown something beyond his expectations. He couldn't help but doubt himself. In all these years, he thought he had grasped everything, but in fact, a lot of loopholes had already appeared. After a while, he defended in a deep voice, you said that I planned for so long, and finally failed, but in fact, I successfully tested Apollo's true power, and he will not have the opportunity to secretly rebel in the future. And in this battle, I finally got the upper hand. He was punished for not setting foot on Olympus for 1,000 years. Although this is light, it can be seen that Themis is still facing me. Fate will give me doom. Hey, how can there be such a punishment? The majesty of my king of gods, after all, still makes Themis deviate from me. When I recover from the injury, I will eradicate Apollo. Saying so, he seemed to regain his confidence. After all, after several times in the sky, the earth, the ocean and the underworld, there are several people who can bring him doom, and Themis has no ability to affect his destiny, and the punishment she said is only biased towards his rhetoric. This noble goddess of justice is still his supporter after all. This made him feel much better. At this moment, Olympus below suddenly trembled. An icy drink shook the world. The incompetent gods of Olympus, welcome your disaster. My father of all demons, Typhon, will lead thousands of descendants to conquer your paradise and replace your rule. When Zeus comes out, I will defeat you, the ridiculous god king, in front of all beings in the universe. Outside Olympus, the foul breath whistled like a hurricane. In the endless suffocating energy, a terrifying giant beast with 100 ferocious heads led many monsters to bombard Mount Olympus with powerful force. Terrifying waves of destruction spread across the universe, obscuring the sun, moon and stars, and the majestic Mount Olympus trembled. Zeus' face froze, looking at his seriously injured body, and then feeling the emptiness and lack of divine power just after the war. His face changed wildly. Themis. The doom of this fate has come so quickly. Boom. The huge sound shook the universe, and the continuous shaking shook the earth. Many gods looked at their feet in amazement. The immortal Mount Olympus, the home of the gods, the center of the world, the most sacred and inviolable place in the world. No one ever thought that this immortal mountain will be shaken one day. No one can afford to offend the gods because of this. But today it happened. The vast sky was bleak, and the violent hurricane blew thousands of dark clouds, covering the sky with a thick curtain. And under this thick curtain, the terrifying aura of destruction filled the air. In the endless filth, there is a hideous existence that looks like the incarnation of terror. His body is taller than a mountain, standing like a huge star in the sky. The dark green skin is full of imposing aura in the darkness, 100 hideous and ugly heads, and 200 scarlet cold eyes. 100 mouths laughed at Olympus at the same time. The overwhelming force of filth and destruction blows over Olympus like a gust of wind. And behind him, followed by many equally ugly monsters. A giant beast with a human face and a lion body, a banshee with countless snake heads, a vulture with 7 heads, and a devil dog with 3 heads burning hellfire. With the most bloodthirsty eyes, they locked onto the gods up and down Olympus. Staring at this scene, many weak gods hid in trembling, unable to summon the courage to face them. You cowards, we are the gods who rule the world, so we all shy away from battle. Ares, the god of war, raised his shield and great sword, and roared at the hidden gods. But when he looked up at the sky, his eyes were also filled with palpitations, and he finally summoned up the courage to point his sword at the sky and shouted, "Typhon, you ugly monster with 100 heads, this is Olympus, there is no room for you to be presumptuous." As he spoke, he waved his long sword, the war field opened, and his divine power was urged to the extreme, and at a considerable distance, he slashed the blazing sword light of blood and fire. The pair of Typhon's 100 pairs of eyes in the sky suddenly locked on him and let out a contemptuous laugh. Immediately, a violent hurricane spread into the void like a flame. It slammed down towards Ares. Bang! The sword light burning with blood and fire shattered in an instant. The surging hurricane quickly hit Ares. The god of war fell to the foot of Mount Olympus in a state of misery, with broken armor and a bruised face. "Master Ares." Some of the gods rushed over to help him, and the others were full of astonishment. Ares, one of the dignified 12 main gods, was defeated in the face of each other. These weak gods, aren't they looking for death? The gods timidly looked at the upper part of Olympus, especially the temple of the king at the top. There were already several majestic figures flying out. The goddess of justice Themis, the goddess of wisdom Athena, the messenger of the gods Hermes, the god of fire Hephaestus. But the strange thing is that these powerful gods are looking at the sky with extremely solemn expressions at this moment. It's just that no one went out to fight. And the fluctuation of destruction outside became more and more violent. Typhon's terrifying figure kept hitting Olympus, and this immortal mountain was shaking, and there were signs of collapse. The ocean, the earth, the underworld, the gods all over the world were alarmed by this movement and cast their gazes. In the ocean, Poseidon holds a trident and sits high on the throne, with a schadenfreude smile on his face full of blue beards. "Zeus, you've been really unlucky recently. First, he was wounded by his son, and lost his majesty in front of the gods. Now that Typhon has attacked Olympus again, I don't know if your severely wounded body is still capable of fighting. If it can't be done, then my brother can only go out and put an end to this scourge for Olympus, but when the time comes, let me sit on the chair under your ass." Under the surprised eyes of Empress Amphitrite, Poseidon kept laughing. In the dark underworld, Hades the Hades suddenly sneered. He cast his deep eyes into the depths of the underworld. "Tartarus, Typhon is your son with Gaia, what happened this time is yours or Gaia's?" The tone of the lord of the underworld when he spoke seemed very strange. The 2 primordial gods were called by their first names without any respect. But not long after he opened his mouth, a low voice suddenly sounded in his empty hall. "It's not me, and it's not what she meant. This is a fate, a doomed result, just a little bit ahead of schedule for some reason." "It's fate again, you think I don't know the details of all this?" Hades sneered. The low voice sounded again. "You know the details of the authority of the King of God, but you do not know the details of Typhon. Do you think I have a good relationship with Gaia? Of course not. So why did we give birth to such a monster together? Who knows which of you suddenly got a cramp in the head?" Although Hades sneered, he already had some enlightenment in his eyes. The low voice sounded again. "If Zeus can't come up with some unexpected trump cards, he will definitely lose this battle. Because, the so-called young son of the abyss and the earth, Typhon, the father of the 100 demons, is the strongest weapon that Gaia and I specially researched in order to deal with Uranus and Kronos in the past to restrain the authority of the king of gods. Although it was not successful, Zeus only had 2/5 of the authority of the king of gods. Of course, none of this is important. You should hurry up and complete the Elysee paradise. I already feel that the sacrifices that meet its needs have appeared." The deep voice was in the empty hall for a long time. Hades sat icy on the pitch-black throne, his eyes glowing strangely. Are the gods who rule the world just a bunch of cowards who don't dare to fight? Zeus, you are known as the king of the gods. You were so heroic when you fought with your son, how dare you not even show your face now? If you are afraid, then obediently bring your wife and children to bow down to me, and I can forgive your lives. Olympus, the power of terror is still pounding the immortal mountain. Under the dark curtain, Typhon's figure was hideous, and he kept making a sneering sound. And beside him, many monsters are also laughing wildly, staring at the gods and nymphs in Olympus jokingly. Bloodthirsty eyes, full of eager greed. Olympus is the divine court that rules the universe, how can we shrink so much? Some of the gods clenched their fists and roared unwillingly. This inspired the courage of several gods. They rushed out of Olympus with weapons and slaughtered among the monsters. But as soon as he walked out of Olympus, he was swept by Typhon's gaze in the sky. A dark green light suddenly fell. These gods melted in the blink of an eye and turned into a pool of sewage. The terrifying picture made the other gods in Olympus terrified. They all stared at the top of Olympus with trembling and hopeful eyes, looking forward to the supreme king of the gods, to be able to walk out as before, leading them to be invincible and defeat these hateful monsters. With the attention of the gods, the majestic door of the palace of the god king finally opened. First, the beautiful goddess Hera walked out. Immediately surrounded by majestic electric light, Zeus held a lightning spear, full of supreme majesty, and indifferently focused on Typhon outside. Under the excited eyes of the gods, he let out a low roar like thunder. Ugly young son of the abyss and earth, filthy monster, do you know the consequences of angering me, the great king of the gods? Do you mean the consequences, like the son who injured you not long ago? Expelling Olympus for 1,000 years is a terrible consequence. Typhon sneered at 100 heads at the same time. Zeus's face turned ashen. No matter how he concealed it, how much he consoled himself, the defeat in the battle with Apollo had already made him dignified. Typhon, Apollo, you should all be imprisoned in Tartarus. He roared in his heart, but because he was too angry, the last few words made a sound. After Typhon heard it, he laughed wildly and said, Tartaros, that's just right, I haven't gone back to see Godfather for a long time. It just so happens that I can greet your Godfather for you. The last time I saw him, I had a good time there, doing nothing every day and taking good care of myself. The veins on Zeus' forehead jumped. There were also some murmurs in the bottom of my heart. Except for a few gods, including him, the king of the gods, none of them had really entered Tartaros, which is known as the darkest abyss. Isn't there really some kind of hell, where the titans of Cronus live comfortably in it? After all, he was also the king of the gods who had experienced many battles, and Zeus soon found himself being led astray by Typhon. No matter how much he said with one mouth, he would definitely not be able to say Typhon with 100 mouths. Without hesitation, he struck the sky with a lightning bolt. It's good to come, I've been waiting for a long time. Typhon's 200 eyes flashed a cold green light at the same time. He grinned at Zeus who came to kill him. Can't remember how long ago it was. As early as the moment he was born, the Father God, who was always hidden in darkness, and the most indifferent and ruthless Mother God, told him all. The destiny of your existence is to defeat the king who rules the gods, and when you do this, you will break the shackles of destiny and become the eternal king of the world. Zeus, the moment of fate has come. Typhon's 100 heads let out a shocking roar at the same time, and one after another infiltrating green light spurted out of his eyes. Under the shroud of dark green light, Zeus was shocked to discover his strongest god-king authority has lost its effectiveness. How can this be, my authority? Zeus's heart trembled as he stared at the dark green light that filled the sky. For the fateful confrontation with Typhon, he had already anticipated it. But he didn't expect this day to come so quickly, and he didn't know Typhon's true origin. He thought that he might be defeated, and he also prepared for it. But he never imagined that his invincible divine king's authority would be like a nemesis in front of Typhon. Boom! When Zeus changed color, Typhon rolled up a monstrous hurricane. Under the gaze of the gods, the ruler of the sky and the earth, the king of Olympus and the universe. The duel was only a face-to-face, and was knocked out by the ugly 100 monsters. The gods of Olympus could hardly believe their eyes. But the cold reality will not change by their will. The multitude of monsters below cheered, shouting their father's name, and roaring towards Olympus. No, those monsters are coming up. The gods panicked as they looked at the many monsters rushing in like a tidal wave, their faces turned pale. Perhaps the gods of the past were all brave and good at war. But since the Titan War, Olympus has hardly ever had a major war, and the gods born after that have grown up, 213, in a comfortable environment since childhood. And the previous gods, who have experienced tens of thousands of years of extravagant life, have long forgotten what it looks like to fight. They are the gods, the masters of all things in the universe. Who dares to challenge the majesty of God? Where do you need to fight on the battlefield? The moment when many monsters filled with monstrous aura, with bloodthirsty eyes and greedy desire, grinned and attacked Olympus. The noble gods in the mountains discovered that once they lost the protection of the king of the gods and the main gods. These weak gods are actually just cowards who want to tremble in fear in front of monsters. The glory of the gods is always just a false lie. In the face of murderous enemies, the life of the gods is equally fragile. A ferocious lion with 4 heads rushed up to Olympus and hit a young male god. The claws press down, and the giant mouth bites. Laugh. The male god's throat was bitten, and the 4 heads of the fierce lion devoured his body at the same time. In just a blink of an eye, the male god of the lower god level was swallowed into pieces. The bloody picture made many gods above them terrified. At the same time, more monsters rushed towards them. The gods were in chaos, and they fled in a panic. Should we go and help them? Beside Athena, Nike, the goddess of victory with white wings, frowned and looked down. The goddess of wisdom cast her eyes on Typhon in the distance, and said softly, Olympus has been calm for too long, this storm is destined to wash away some worms, and we can't help them. As she spoke, a thunder shook the sky. Zeus crawled up from the ground in embarrassment, holding a lightning spear in his hand, spitting flames in his eyes, and concentrating on Typhon in the sky. Ugly monster, even without the authority of the king of gods, Zeus, the king of the gods, can still defeat you. Holding the lightning spear tightly in his hand, Zeus' figure turned into 1,000 lightning bolts, rushing towards Typhon's huge body. Bang! One after another terrifying electric light, with the angry flame of the king of the gods, roared and hit Typhon's body, bursting out endless sparks. The lightning spear merged with Zeus' figure, the pale light and shadow pierced through the space, and the heads of Typhon fell like a shower. On Olympus, Hera's eyes showed excitement. Zeus at this moment reminded her of the time when she faced the mighty father god Cronus during the Titan War. That is obviously the youngest of the brothers and sisters, but one person blocks the front. The heroic figure who used his body to withstand the 3 blows of Kronos' full force, and stabbed the spear into Kronos' chest abruptly. That was the figure she most admired and admired the most. At this moment, he seemed to be back. Boom! When Hera was agitated, Typhon's 100 heads let out a low laugh at the same time, a dark green light enveloped Zeus, and the surging power broke through layers of lightning like a torrent. A huge tail, like the whip of the gods, slapped Zeus's tiny body fiercely. A loud noise echoed through the universe. The figure surrounded by lightning is like a kite with a broken string, falling down from the air. Originally because of Zeus's rapid offensive and heroic posture, the gods who had regained their confidence and the will to fight were filled with despair in their hearts. Many monsters rushed up the mountainside of Olympus. Under the ravages along the way, the original glorious immortal mountain has all been turned into a barren land. It shouldn't be like this. Collapsing on the ground, Zeus looked at himself in disbelief. He could feel that in actual strength, Typhon was not stronger than him. But I don't know why, whenever he gets close to Typhon, the power he exerts will strangely weaken the power. Just like when he suppressed the power of other gods with the authority of the king of gods. Surprise, despair, Typhon's 100 heads let out sneering laughter at the same time, and 200 scarlet eyes stared at the collapsed king of the gods. Because I am your destined nemesis, my birth and existence are all to deal with god kings like you, and these hypocritical gods. The earth gives me the deepest strength, the abyss gives me the most filthy authority, burn me with the fire of hell for thousands of days and nights, and create a great body that exists only for destruction and subversion. Your authority, your divine power, is ridiculous and vain before me. Typhon's figure suddenly swelled several times, and 100 hideous heads were wrapped around the sky, emitting infinite dark green rays of light. This dark green light that filled the sky swept the entire Olympus like a tidal wave. Standing on the top of the mountain, Athena's eyelids jumped, and she hurriedly said to Nikki beside her, "The situation is not right, leave." Nikki nodded, and her figure faded away, leaving only a pair of beautiful wings that landed on Athena's back. Victory is the wings of wisdom. Athena's aura suddenly rose, her eyes flashed with dazzling light, and she rushed out of Olympus in the wind. Other gods do not have such a quick reaction and speed. Under the deep green light covering the sky, many gods, including Hera, Themis, Ares, Hermes, etc., all screamed in horror. "What's going on here? My authority, my divine power." The gods' eyes widened, and they wailed in fear. Under the filthy light of Typhon's dark green, every god was horrified to discover that his authority and divine power had declined by half. At this time, many monsters have completely killed Olympus. They grinned and killed every god that stood in their way. The gods, who had fallen into decline just because they didn't have enough combat experience, were completely defeated at this moment. Looking at the gods who were full of grief, Typhon laughed wildly again with 100 heads. "Zeus, you see, your Olympus, the gods under your rule, are all bloodied and wailing in front of my descendants. HMPH, so what?" Zeus was expressionless, struggling to stand up, raised the lightning spear, and was about to fight again. But the body that had been badly wounded by Apollo has been injured again and again, and at this moment, there is no more power to judge the gods before the lightning. Under the monstrous power of Typhon, the king of the gods was knocked down again. Zeus, on Olympus, Hera, who was being chased by monsters, looked at her fallen husband sadly. What followed was even more startling. Typhon's eyes were cold, and the powerful force bound Zeus' body and stretched violently. Laugh. Blood splattered, flesh separated. The limbs of the king of the gods were torn off. The frightening picture stunned Hera and the gods. Even Poseidon and Hades, who were watching the battle in the ocean and the underworld, had moving expressions on their faces. Poseidon suddenly stood up, rolled up the monstrous waves, and went to Olympus for rescue. At this moment, a dark blue figure stood in front of him. "Poseidon, you can't go to Olympus." "Pontos." Poseidon gritted his teeth and looked at the dark blue figure in front of him. "And at Olympus, the battle continues." The gods, who were weak in authority and divine power, fled in embarrassment under the pursuit of many monsters. Even the main gods such as Hera and Themis were also trapped in the predicament of being besieged. Fortunately, Athena with wings of victory appeared at this time. She raised her spear and tore a hole under the siege of the monsters. Many gods have the opportunity to escape. "Well, chase down." Typhon's eyes froze, and he ordered the monsters to chase down the gods. He turned his attention to Zeus, who had only his head and torso in front of him. "Suffer to death." Without hesitation, Typhon sent out a ray of destruction and was about to kill Zeus. But at this time, a brilliant red light appeared on Zeus. Typhon's attack couldn't hurt him at all. In the pool of blood, Zeus endured the pain and smiled and said, "Typhon, although you defeated me, you cannot kill me, the king of gods, under your destiny. I don't believe in fate." Typhon roared in terror from 100 heads at the same time, and his huge tail slashed at Zeus. Boom! A violent force slapped Zeus. This is enough to separate the oceans, and under the mighty force of breaking the mountains, Zeus was not damaged at all. "Give it up, you can't kill me who is favored by fate." Zeus sneered. Typhon strikes again. But no matter how majestic he exerted, it was difficult to hurt Zeus in the slightest. Fate, fate. Typhon's many heads were entangled in anger, opening his mouth to roar the same word at the same time. Seeing his angry look, Zeus's eyes flashed, and he said lightly, "Give it up, I am the destined king." Suddenly, Typhon became quiet, and his 200 eyes stared at Zeus. "Since fate is protecting you, then I want to see what the so-called fate is." Suddenly, he turned his attention to the direction of the goddess of fate temple. Full of killing intent, what he didn't know was when he looked at the temple of the goddess of fate. Zeus on the ground suddenly evoked a strange smile at the corner of his mouth. "Everyone, hurry up and hunt down these gods. Hey, after so many years, we finally have the opportunity to taste the flesh and blood of the gods." Numerous monsters were bloodthirsty and laughing wildly, and the monstrous aura filled the air, causing the immortal mountain in the center of the world of Olympus to completely lose its former luster. The gods looked at the homeland occupied by monsters with grief and indignation, and fled in a hurry. Fear and helplessness filled his heart. Olympus has fallen. Typhon was so powerful and terrifying that even the king of the gods was defeated and his limbs torn off. He waited for the gods to be caught by Typhon's strange green light. His power and authority faded, and his fighting power was only less than half of his usual level. Even the monsters under Typhon are not opponents, and they are simply powerless to fight against Typhon. Could it be that the court of Olympus, who ruled the world, just died? Not being overthrown by a new generation of gods, but by the hands of demons and monsters. The gods could not accept such an ending. They are born noble gods, how can they succumb to the hands of monsters? But in the current situation, the king of gods may have died in battle, who else can save Olympus? No one had an answer, and the gods were running for their lives. Or change into flying birds and fish, or change into beasts and insects, evading the pursuit of Typhon's descendants. Your Majesty, after finally escaping the pursuit of Typhon's descendants, in a forest, the goddess Hera collapsed to the ground in grief, crying for her husband. Seeing her look of despair and grief, the gods couldn't help but be moved. In the past, the various contradictions between the God Queen and the God King were viewed as a joke. But at this juncture, the gods are mostly frightened, and the only one who can cry for the King of gods is Hera. Sister, Zeus is the king of the gods, and he will never fall like this. Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, comforted her, hugging her daughter Persephone tightly. Ares rarely did not make her angry, and said in a firm tone, Father God is the greatest king of the gods. Typhon just used despicable means to temporarily win this game. He can't help God Father, and when we recover our divine power, we can go and defeat him and rescue him. God the Father. Defeat Typhon and rescue the God King. Hera murmured these two sentences, her face pale. Before at Olympus, we had so many gods who failed to win against Typhon, we will be able to win against him by regrouping. This question silenced the gods present. As powerful as Zeus, they all failed miserably under Typhon. Who dares to say that he can beat Typhon? The goddess of justice Themis said, maybe we can go to Poseidon and Hades, and the goddess Gaia. This sentence brightened the eyes of the gods present. Hades, the king of the underworld, and Poseidon, the king of the sea, were both kings and powerful kings. And Gaia, the mother of the earth, is the grandmother of the gods, one of the original gods. If you can get the help of these people, there is hope to fight against Typhon. Hera shook her head and said in denial, Typhon is the son of Mother Earth, she is lucky if she didn't help Typhon, and it is impossible to ask her to help. As for Hades and Poseidon, if they had the heart to rescue them, they should have appeared long ago when the King of God was defeated, and they haven't appeared yet, either because they wanted to see a joke, or they couldn't make a move at all. After calming down from her grief, Hera regained her wisdom as a god and analyzed the current situation, but came to a more desperate conclusion. But apart from Mother Earth, Hades, and Sea Emperor, who else among the gods can help us? The gods said at a loss. Hera was also at a loss, frowning tightly. At this moment, the heroic and graceful Athena flew down from the sky and said solemnly, I do have a candidate here. If we can invite him to take action, coupled with our strength, there is hope to defeat Typhon. The gods looked at the goddess of wisdom with excited eyes. Previously, everyone was struck by Typhon's strange green light, their divine power was weakened, and they were besieged by demons and monsters. It was this seemingly delicate girl who turned the tide and opened the way for the gods. After that, she kept breaking for everyone, which made the gods get rid of the encirclement and suppression of demons. At this moment, in the hearts of the gods, Athena's prestige was only chasing Zeus, who did not know whether to live or die. Even Ares, who hated Athena the most, did not have the usual disgust in his eyes, but was full of expectations. Under the gazes of the gods, Athena said slowly, the person I am talking about who can fight against Typhon is Apollo, the god of light. Apollo, the god of light, is indeed a very suitable candidate. He is powerful and does not lose to the king of gods. But he has only fought against the king of gods. Now go and invite him. Hearing this name, the gods looked at each other, both tempted and hesitant. Hera was the first to question, it's better to go to Hades and Poseidon. Although Apollo has a certain strength, he has only disobeyed the king of God before, and now he is still receiving punishment in Delphi. Let's not say whether we want or not. If we are willing to ask him to help, he is afraid that he will not help us. The Queen of God really thinks so, or are you afraid that Apollo will embarrass you because of your previous grievances? Athena's eyes flickered, and she asked sharply. Hera's face was a little ugly, and as the gods watched, she gritted her teeth and said, I have such considerations, but I'm telling the truth. If Apollo is really willing to help defeat Typhon and rescue the divine king, even if I kneel in front of him and beg him, it's fine, but will he agree? With your words from Goddess Hera, I can guarantee it here, and I will definitely be able to convince him to take action. Athena said with a faint smile, her bright eyes filled with certainty. Seeing her confident appearance, the other gods present looked at each other and nodded in agreement, then go to Apollo and ask him to fight against Typhon. Only Hera and Ares were the gods with reluctance on their faces. But no one cared what they thought. The picture of Zeus being torn apart by Typhon, the gods are vividly remembered. Except for a few gods, most of the gods felt that Zeus must be dead. The most important thing in this situation is to establish a new god king and lead the gods to fight against Typhon. As the son of Zeus, Apollo, handsome, elegant, and powerful, was the most suitable candidate among the main gods. Most of the gods of Olympus had a good impression of Apollo, and they used to worry about Zeus. Now even if Zeus is not dead, he is not far from death. Who cares so much? After all, this is also the real Olympian god, which is better than Poseidon of the ocean and Hades of the underworld. Apollo, the god of light, you are the last hope of Olympus. With such an idea in mind, the gods rushed to Delphi. Mount Olympus. Typhon reduced his figure and sat on the throne in the palace of the god king. Overlooking the homeland of the gods, which had been devastated by monsters, he sneered from 100 heads at the same time. The so-called throne of God King is nothing more than that. Having said that, he called some monsters and asked, have you locked Zeus? According to your father's instructions, I have locked him in a hidden place that no one will know about. The Sphinx replied. She is one of the few cultural monsters with extraordinary knowledge among Typhon's descendants, who is deeply trusted by Typhon. Seeing her answer, Typhon nodded with satisfaction. Let Cerberus stay there and deal with Zeus when I return from the temple of the goddess of destiny. Father is going to the temple of the goddess of destiny. The Sphinx's face was worried. Typhon, who knew this air very well, frowned and said, just say what you want to say. The Sphinx said, as far as I know, the power of destiny has always been the most mysterious and irreversible force in the world, and the three goddesses of destiny are also the most mysterious and unknowable among the gods. I think there may be something terrible hidden in them, trap. Haha, even Zeus is not my opponent, how can there be any trap in this world that can threaten me? Typhon's 100 heads burst into laughter at the same time. Besides, Zeus is favored by fate. If you can't figure out the details of the power of fate, I can never kill him. Father God went to the temple of the goddess of destiny to find a way to kill Zeus, so why take this risk? Have you forgotten the sword in the hand of the son of Zeus in the battle not long ago? Zeus was almost killed at that time, and there was no power of fate to protect him. The Sphinx's voice exploded in Typhon's mind like thunder. Typhon stood up abruptly, lined up on the throne beside him and said, that's right, that sword. It is a sword of destruction that symbolizes the most absolute destruction, and it seems that it can indeed threaten the life of Zeus. He was a little excited and said to himself, what is the name of that son of Zeus? It seems to be called Apollo. While Typhon was reminiscing, his daughter, the Harpy, came in and reported, Father, the gods of Olympus have fled to a human city-state called Delphi, and they seem to be looking for a god called Apollo to oppose you. Typhon's 200 eyes suddenly opened at the same time. Looking around the many descendants below, he coldly ordered, call everyone, follow me to Delphi, and snatch the divine sword. Delphi. Apollo stood still in the temple, his golden eyes looked into the distance, and his brows were slightly wrinkled. Of course, he felt the situation of Olympus. Typhon was able to defeat Zeus so quickly, which was somewhat beyond his expectations. Did Zeus hurt too badly on my hand, or did he have other plans and didn't really resist with all his strength? While Apollo pondered, Artemis looked at him with slightly worried eyes. Don't worry, the matter of Olympus has nothing to do with us. We are the sin gods who are punished and imprisoned," Apollo said to her with a light smile. Artemis nodded. Tekisha and Chiron, who had just walked in, looked at each other strangely. Chiron felt something slightly, and said to Apollo, "God of light, is something wrong?" Apollo said lightly, "It's nothing major, that is, Olympus was captured by Typhon." Chiron and Tekisha suddenly opened their mouths wide and looked at each other with shocked expressions. Olympus has fallen. That is the home of the gods, the center of the world. Chiron was stunned for a while before speaking again. "God of light, how could Olympus fall? What about the king of the gods and the main gods?" "Of course they were completely defeated, but they didn't fall so easily, we don't have to worry about them." Apollo's face was calm, and he suddenly focused his eyes on Chiron. The centaur of the second-generation god King Blood suddenly felt very uncomfortable. Although he worshipped Apollo as a god before, he was actually far ahead of Apollo in terms of age and generation, and he respected this young god, but he didn't actually have much reverence. But when he saw Apollo again at this moment, he deeply felt an inexplicable majestic power, just like when he faced his father, the god King Cronus, when he was young. The sense of holiness and majesty on Apollo was even heavier than that. A pair of golden eyes seemed to see through his past and future. "Chiron, you think too much, this is the god of light, not the god of time, how can you say that you can see through the future?" Chiron said to himself like this, packing up his mood. At this time, Apollo suddenly said, "Chiron, have you been in contact with the son of Iapetus, the great prophet, the fire thief?" The voice was incomparably flat, but it was like thunder when it landed in Chiron's ear. His eyes were wide open, full of inconceivable looking at the bright blonde figure in front of him. It was the biggest secret of his life. How did you know?" Seeing Chiron even trembling, Artemis and Tekisha became curious. Son of Iapetus, great prophet, fire thief, these terms refer to only one person. Prometheus, the Titan prophet who was chained by Zeus in the Caucasus Mountains. Although this person is a great figure among the gods, he is not so rude if he has been in contact with him, right? Chiron was stunned in place for a long time, and it took a while before he came back to his senses. Looking around, he sighed, "This is actually a long time ago. When I was Cronus and my mother gave birth to me, they turned my mother into a horse, so I was born a half-man, half-horse existence, so I was not accepted by my mother and abandoned me. Many people know it." Chiron's face was filled with reminiscence. "Later I grew into the most outstanding hero on earth, the most learned sage. Do you think an abandoned baby has the ability to achieve such an achievement?" he asked. Tekisha immediately reacted and said in surprise, "Is Prometheus helping you?" "That's right, only a great prophet like him can teach you such an outstanding sage and hero." "Actually, he never admitted that I was his student." Chiron smiled bitterly. "He said that he held the position of teaching the son of the god king in the Titan god court, and I was also the son of the god king, so he fulfilled this responsibility. If it wasn't for him, I, who was abandoned by my mother, may not have the chance to live to the present." He raised his head sadly and stared at Apollo. "This is the biggest secret I have buried in my heart. How did you know it?" "Because I saw your past and I saw your future." Apollo's golden eyes were deep, and he spoke in a low voice. In his eyes, Chiron was wrapped in a thread. The end of the line was in the past, on the day he met the wise figure in the ice and snow. The other end of the line is in the future, the day he set foot on the Caucasus Mountains to replace the bounded vicissitudes of life. The body is the cage of the spirit, and the world is the cage of the body. Perhaps on the first day you met him, you were already a prisoner bound by this thread. Looking at the centaur in front of him, Apollo murmured in his heart. His eyes pierced through the past and pierced into the future. The whole time was under his eyes. There are only a few places that he can't see clearly for the time being. One is fate, the other is the ignorant era before the establishment of the first divine court, and the other is the great prophet who was bound. A woman, the most beautiful woman in the world, you have to find her. She was once blessed by the gods, and she came to the world to open the magic box that symbolized terror for mankind, but she only kept hope in it. Find her and you'll get hope. Apollo's solemn voice echoed in Chiron's ears. Chiron looked at him in astonishment, and found that both Tekisha and Artemis were completely unheard. The most beautiful woman in the world, once blessed by the gods, is a magic box for mankind. Is this finding hope? Chiron's heart trembled, and he felt that there were pictures in front of him. There was a past and a future. When looking at Apollo, only the golden light flashing on the opponent's body is not dazzling golden, but the flow of gold of the years. Golden eyes, in the sky above time, overlooking the past and the future. Follow your oracles. Under the surprised gazes of Tecisa and Artemis, Chiron's four hooves bowed slightly and suddenly bowed to Apollo. Just as he was about to leave, the outside suddenly shook. Artemis frowned and took out his bow and arrow. Apollo stops her. At this moment, a figure appeared in front of her and said with a teasing, "Sister Artemis, what are you doing?" "Athena, you don't want Apollo to help those gods like wild dogs on the roadside in Olympus." Artemis' eyes were cold. As a god-level god, she can perceive the current situation of Olympus. And she knew Athena's character very well. "Now I am here, not just to ask my brother to go out and help. HMPH, my brother's injury is just right. Why did you go out to help you deal with a terrifying existence like Typhon?" She locked Athena with cold eyes. The goddess of wisdom has no doubt that if Apollo was not by her side, her sister would have come up to fight her. "Oh, it's no wonder that he likes you so much, but he refuses to call me sister." Athena sighed lightly and looked at Apollo, who was standing there with bright eyes. Suddenly she felt something was wrong. The familiar blonde figure in front of her seemed to be much more inscrutable than before, and a pair of eyes seemed to see through her. This made her originally full of confidence fade a little. "Athena, why are you afraid of him? Although he is powerful, he is only a god who was born less than 100 years ago. Didn't you basically predict what he did in the past? Don't be fooled by appearances. You are the goddess of wisdom, the goddess who can control everything in the world with wisdom." Telling herself this, Athena opened her mouth with a smile. "Apollo, I am here on behalf of the gods to invite you to fight against Typhon. You should already know what happened to Olympus." She waited for Apollo to ask, "Why should I help the gods of Olympus?" Unexpectedly, Apollo smiled lightly and walked slowly to her. "Let me guess why you're going to convince me. Although Olympus fell, the main gods were not injured much, and there were two strong aides, Hades and Poseidon. If I don't act, I will force the gods to take refuge in them and support them to become the king of the gods. Zeus seems to be defeated, but in fact he still has his back. You have mastered a secret, the secret of the fate of Zeus and Typhon. If you want to stop Zeus' plan, you must first defeat Typhon before him. As long as I defeat Typhon, my prestige can surpass Zeus, and you can conquer the gods for me, and even if Zeus returns, you can take him down. In this way, you can use the method of peaceful evolution, first make Zeus a puppet, and then force him to give me the position of the king of gods. This is your plan to get revenge on Zeus. He killed your mother, your brother, so you're pissed just to beat him. You have to let him sit on the throne of the king of gods. Very good. Step by step to watch the power that you value most is taken away, and the gods around him betray him one by one. This is the real revenge." Quote. Apollo's voice was like thunder, shaking in Athena's heart. Her bright eyes widened involuntarily, staring at the golden figure in front of her. All along, in the cooperation and communication with Apollo, she knew that this was a smart and powerful god. But in the end it's just a little brother. She is the proudest goddess of wisdom. She is confident she can handle everything. But today Athena found herself wrong. The once immature and young god has grown up and is beyond his own control. I don't know why, this deep golden figure is so full of charm, which makes her heart tremble. Stabilizing her inner thoughts, she maintained a confident smile and said, "Although you have the priesthood of prophecy, you didn't speak in this way before. Human fortune tellers like this, shocking the target with a frightening tone and taking the initiative. You have been in the human race for a long time and learned it. No, I'm not trying to frighten you." Apollo's expression was calm, and suddenly he leaned over to Athena's side, his handsome cheek against her ear. The hot breath blew through Athena's crystal earlobes and her golden hair, and she heard a low voice. "These words are what the future you said to me." Athena was speechless, staring at the dazzling blonde figure in front of her. For some reason, she felt that these seemingly ridiculous words were so full of truth. Those golden eyes are so deep. As vast as a galaxy, as vast as the sky. Unconsciously, have you grown to this point? That's right, only the unpredictable is the real king. The gods who can be easily expected and grasped by others are not qualified to sit on the top of the vast sky and rule all spirits in the universe. Although a little disappointed, Athena had more expectations in her heart. Blinking bright eyes, she smiled lightly and approached her golden eyes. Since you know everything, then you can quickly give an answer, but you can't let Poseidon and Hades take the lead, and Zeus may have a change soon. Apollo moved his body lightly and asked, "You should tell Zeus's secret first, and then I will think about it." Actually, it's not a big secret. Zeus seems to have expected a fateful battle with Typhon a long time ago, but it seems that the battle with you has brought this forward. And after the fall of Olympus, most of the main gods escaped and gathered together, but one person was missing, the most trusted confidant of Zeus. Athena's eyes were deep. Apollo looked outside and said softly, "Hermes." "That's right, it's him." Athena nodded. Hermes is the messenger of the gods, and has the authority of travel, with the attribute of space. In terms of speed, it is the first among the gods. It is possible for any god to be killed or trapped, but he is the most unlikely to escape. Why didn't he come to be with the gods? Of course, because he had more important duties. The task he has to do is related to the fateful battle between Zeus and Typhon, and it is related to fate. Although I don't know the specific situation, I guess it may be related to Zeus' promotion to the original realm. The best way to stop this is to defeat Typhon before Zeus. Athena spoke softly. After listening to her words, Apollo's mouth curled into a smile. "I probably understand the situation, but if you want me to take action, you should ask Hera to come and see me in person." Athena went out. "Apollo, do you really want to help them?" Artemis looked at his brother with worried eyes. "Typhon's strength is very strong. Even here I can feel the terrifying suffocation when he conquered Olympus. What if you are injured in a battle with him?" Artemis grabbed Apollo's hand. "Sister, don't worry, I won't do anything I'm not sure about." Apollo smiled. In the dark cave, looking at the ferocious three-headed giant dog outside, a sneer appeared at the corner of Zeus's mouth. "Typhon, are you sending such an idiot to guard me?" Although his limbs were torn off, the king of the gods remained majestic and confident. Staring at the darkness in front of him, he said in his heart, "Hey, you should have gone to the temple of the goddess of destiny by now. As long as you step there, you are doomed to fail. And all the suffering now, as well as your life, will become a stepping stone for me to set foot in the original and become the true god of the gods. Although it's a lot earlier than originally planned, it's all still in my grasp." Thinking of this, a stern look appeared in his eyes. "HMPH, after I'm promoted to primordial, the first thing I have to do is to get rid of the evil son of Apollo, then defeat Hades and Poseidon, seize their authority, and achieve the complete throne of God King. At that time, both Gaia and Tartarus will bow down to me, and I will be above the gods and destiny." When his heart was surging and fantasizing about the future, Zeus suddenly heard a voice from outside. "Is it finally here?" His eyes flashed. After a while, the whimpering sound of the three-headed devil dog came from outside, and a slender, handsome young god walked in with a tired face. "Father, I have come to rescue you as instructed." Hermes walked to Zeus. "Yes, you did a good job." Zeus nodded to him. Looking at Zeus, who only had the torso and head, Hermes hurriedly carried him on his back and said, "I heard that your limbs were hidden in Olympus by Typhon, and now Typhon has taken his descendants to Delphi, just in time to get them back." "What? Where did you say Typhon went?" Zeus was suddenly surprised. Hermes said in surprise, "I went to Delphi. Isn't it exactly what you want when Typhon goes to trouble Apollo?" Zeus's eyes were full of anger and panic, and electric lights flashed on his body. Hermes did not know what happened, and stood at the entrance of the cave embarrassedly. After a while, Zeus ordered, "Quick, take me to Olympus to retrieve my hands and feet." Hermes had no choice but to spread his wings immediately, carrying Zeus on his back to Olympus. "Athena, how is the situation? Did Apollo agree to take action?" As soon as he walked out of Delphi, there were many gods around Athena, full of expectations. The goddess of wisdom had a smile on her face. Apollo originally resented the injustice of His Majesty the God King towards him, but he turned towards Olympus and the gods after all. After some persuasion from me, he has almost agreed, as long as Goddess Hera, you can talk to him again. The gods fixed their gazes on the haggard-looking Hera. Hera said with an ugly face, "Is he going to humiliate me?" "Well, as I said before, as long as he is willing to help fight Typhon and rescue the King of God, even if I kneel in front of him, I am willing." Saying so, she walked towards the temple of Delphi with determination in her eyes. As soon as she entered the temple and saw the golden figure, she immediately fell to her knees and pleaded. "Apollo, Olympus has fallen, the gods have been defeated, I am the queen of the gods, but I cannot help my husband, nor can I lead the gods to counterattack. I know you hate me very much, and now I'm kneeling here at your disposal, you hurry up and save the king of gods." Both Tekisha and Chiron were stunned. This glamorous woman is Hera, the queen of the gods. She actually knelt in front of the god of light and asked for forgiveness. Even Artemis was a little lost at the moment. The huge temple was suddenly silent. Hera crawls on the floor with her head lowered, her haggard face full of determination. Is it a humiliation to kneel before the son of the husband and lover who was to persecute in the past after the gods who are high above? Of course humiliation. But she is the wife of Zeus, for her husband, she can bear no matter how big the humiliation. Apollo, Artemis, vent your hatred for me and humiliate me. If this humiliation can be exchanged for her husband's life, it will be worth it. Standing in the middle, Apollo suddenly let out a sigh. Hera, I know your loyalty to Zeus, no matter what he does outside, you love him the most, and you are willing to bear everything for him. But I didn't call you here to humiliate you, and it doesn't give me any pleasure. The golden eyes stared lowly, and Apollo sent out a divine power to lift Hera up. After staring at the pale god in front of him, he asked, "If you want my help, I want you to make a promise to me in the name of Zeus." "What promise?" Hera asked. "I know Hecate, the goddess of the underworld, and she is the deputy king of the underworld. I think this title is very good, so I also want to be Dang Dang." Hera's face changed instantly. "You want to be the deputy of Olympus?" "It's not just Olympus, it's the deputy of the entire divine court," Apollo corrected. Hera's face turned even paler. Olympus means Mount Olympus. The court of Olympus refers to the three major forces including Mount Olympus, the ocean, and the underworld. If it is only the deputy monarch of Olympus, it can only be the god of Olympus. And if it is the deputy monarch of the entire divine court, it can represent Olympus and interfere with the ocean and the underworld. It is truly second only to the king of the gods and the deputy king of the sky. "No, I'm not qualified to promise this condition, let's change it." Hera trembled. "What do you think of Aphrodite, the god of love and beauty, the most dazzling pearl among the gods? You don't have a wife yet, I betrothed her to you." Hera murmured. Apollo's face turned cold. "Hera, do you think I can't walk when I see a woman, just like your husband?" Unexpectedly, Artemis, who was next to him, lit up and came over and said, "I think this proposal is a good idea, you should have a wife too, it is better to let her betroth Aphrodite to you first, and then make you the deputy of the court of God." Her words stunned both Apollo and Hera. Seeing Hera staying there, Artemis said coldly, "Typhon is such a terrifying existence, and he refuses to agree to this condition. I don't want Apollo to risk his life like this." "It is good." After a while of silence, Hera gritted her teeth. "As long as you are willing to fight against Typhon immediately, I will give you both the deputy lord of the court and Aphrodite." Her eyes were bloodshot, and her voice was almost hoarse. Apollo suddenly looked towards the sky and said solemnly, "Don't worry about it, he's already here." Chapter 71. Outside of Delphi, thousands of dark clouds gathered at an unknown time. The sky turned gray, as if being covered with a curtain. Between the evil spirits, the majestic hurricane swept through, the space shook, and the world trembled. Typhon's terrifying and ferocious figure appeared majestically in the vast sky, with 100 ferocious heads, 200 scarlet eyes, and a dark green eerie light spewing from his mouth. Behind him, many monsters such as the Sphinx, the Harpy, the lion-headed sheep body monster Chemela, also showed a bloodthirsty chill, looking at the distant city-state. Suddenly, Typhon roared coldly, "Son of Zeus, in the name of Typhon, the youngest son of the abyss and the earth, father of the 100 demons, now come out and hand over your sword, and I will spare you from dying." 100 heads uttered sounds at the same time, and the terrifying fluctuations instantly shook the sky. Whether it is the many people in Delphi, or the gods such as Athena outside Delphi, they are all horrified. God of light is above, what kind of monster is this? A lot of heads, more than the head of the Hydra back then. It is terrible, the God of light bless us. Yes, pray to the God of light. The people of Delphi panicked and began to pray in a daze. How did Typhon come so quickly? Outside Delphi, among the gods, Ares roared and stared at the sky with fearful eyes. The other gods also trembled, but they looked at the terrifying figure in the distance. Demeter, the goddess of agriculture, had a cold face, and hugged her daughter Persephone tightly, preventing her from seeing Typhon's terrifying appearance. Aphrodite, the god of love and beauty, hugged her beautiful cheeks in fear, and her whole body tightened. The fawn Pan carefully looked around, wondering which route would be faster if he escaped. Only a few gods such as Athena and Themis remained calm. Themis said solemnly, Typhon seems to be coming for Apollo. It seems that no matter whether Hera can reach an agreement with Apollo or not, Apollo must fight. In the temple of Delphi, Hera's haggard face was full of astonishment. Why did Typhon take the initiative to find Apollo just after he agreed to Apollo's conditions? Isn't that, in fact, he doesn't have to agree to any conditions from him at all, and he doesn't even have to ask him, he must face Typhon. Hera, you are the queen of the gods, and you can't go back on what you say. Apollo gave her a faint glance, and his figure turned into a bright golden light and rushed outside. Artemis followed closely. Only Hera with an angry face was left. I've been lied to, why did I promise so quickly? Standing in the temple, the gods could not suppress their anger and remorse for a long time. What she didn't even know was that Typhon was a crucial step in Zeus' promotion to the primordial. In order to sabotage Zeus' plan, there is no need for her to come to the door at all, and Apollo will also solve Typhon before Zeus. O great God of light, save your people and destroy this terrifying monster. Under the pressure of Typhon, thousands of people were trembling with fear, and they kept saying prayers from their mouths. Suddenly, infinite bright light slowly spread out from the majestic temple in the center of the city-state. In the splendid light of the sky, a handsome figure surging with a sacred aura slowly walked out, with golden eyes overlooking the earth. The God of light has appeared. The people who were praying shouted excitedly, staring at the golden figure walking out of the sky with incomparably pious eyes, full of excitement. Apollo showed up. There is hope for Olympus. The gods outside the city-state were also excited, looking up at the golden figure walking out, their eyes filled with excitement. Like a drowning person who saw a life-saving straw. In the eyes of all the people, Apollo silently came to the top of the sky and looked at the huge and terrifying monster in the distance. You want to take my sword? He asked. That's right, if you know the status, you can hand it over immediately. It's good for everyone. Typhon opened his mouth with 100 heads at the same time. Apollo grinned, and a flaming sword appeared in his palm. The sword is here, if you have the ability, come and take it. His golden eyes showed murderous aura. It seems that you are ignorant. Typhon laughed wickedly. 100 heads were entangled together, surging suffocation swept the sky and the earth, and the world seemed to be shaking. Even your father Zeus, the despicable guy known as the king of the gods, has already smeared blood under my feet. Olympus fell at the mercy of my heirs, those gods, those of your brothers and sisters, trembling and fleeing, not even having the courage to face me. The gods have fallen, what makes you think you can stand against me? Typhon suddenly let out an earth-shattering roar, and 100 heads shot out dark green light at the same time, rushing towards where Apollo was. Apollo, beware! The gods below screamed, and they all experienced the horror of this dark green light, which can suppress the authority and power of the gods, and once they are attacked, they will lose more than half of their combat power. If Apollo was accidentally attacked, there would be no need for this battle to continue. Undoubtedly defeated. At the moment when Typhon suddenly attacked, Apollo seemed to have expected it. His figure flashed in the air, easily and indifferently avoiding the coverage of the dark green light. Well, you're quick to react. The 200 eyes were crimson and condensed, and Typhon made a series of low voices, intertwined. Suddenly, his thick tail slammed into the sky. Like a sharp whip. Wherever it reaches, the void bursts, everything shatters, and it is so fast and fierce to the extreme. But just before he flicked his tail, Apollo once again predicted in advance that while the figure was shaking, the field of light descended, converging into a majestic blow. Boom! The impact of the power of light hit Typhon's head. Hearing a loud bang, the Sphinx and other monsters changed color, and Typhon's head exploded with a stench and blood red, and it was torn apart. Typhon is injured. The gods watched this scene with excitement. Since Typhon killed Olympus, it was the first time he was wounded. This gave them hope of victory. Apollo, you must win, it's up to you to restore the glory of Olympus. In the city-state of Delphi, many people were also very excited. This monster seems to be called Typhon, and even the king of the gods has been defeated by him, but now he is at a disadvantage before the great god of light. God of light, you are indeed the greatest and most powerful being among the gods. Thousands of people at the same time once again praise the light. Why, every attack of mine seems to be in his expectations. Resisting the pain of breaking his brain, Typhon's 99 heads began to think quickly. As a weapon born to fight against the authority of the king of gods, he may not be wise in other aspects, but his fighting wisdom is the top. Between the two moves, he has found some problems. Surprise. It's okay to tell you, because my eyes have penetrated the ears. Feeling the change in Typhon's mood, Apollo's golden eyes were flat, and his figure reappeared beside Typhon. The bright field opened, and at the same time the power of ether exploded, and a stern punch hit the back of Typhon's huge body. Boom! Under the gaze of the gods and the thousands of residents of Delphi, Typhona's majestic body, which was taller than the mountains, was lightly punched by Apollo and blasted into the sky. At the same time, a pure white flame spread. With the terrifying light and heat of the distorted space, it spread turbulently towards Typhon. The huge momentum shook the universe. In the vast ocean, Poseidon held a trident in his hand and stared coldly at the handsome figure with dark blue hair in front of him. A sudden burst of laughter. Pontos, you stopped me for so long from helping Olympus, but now it seems that Typhon is still going to lose. Opposite him, in the endless waves, the primitive sea god Pontos looked indifferent. That's not my concern, it's my job to stop you now. The task, who ordered you, Gaia? Poseidon frowned. Pontos answered him with a raging wave. And in the dark underworld, facing the empty hall, Hades smiled coldly and said, it seems that this weapon Typhon can only restrain the authority of the god king and defeat Zeus, but it is so embarrassing in Apollo's hands. No, it's not that simple. Tartaro's voice was confused, as if he was investigating something. After a while, he muttered, that Apollo is very unusual, he has a supreme aura, and his eyes seem to be able to see through time. Supreme. Hades' face changed suddenly, and then he regained his calm. It seems that your young son will be defeated by him. Unexpectedly, Tartarus let out a low laugh. Where is this? If it is so easy to be defeated, then I don't need to spend so much effort with Gaia. His voice did not fall. In the vast sky, surrounded by pure yang fireworks, Typhon, who was knocked into the air, sneered at the same time from 99 heads. Suddenly, his huge body like a mountain gradually shrunk by more than half, becoming only the size of a tall building. At the same time, an extremely rich dark green light slowly penetrated and appeared from every pore on his body, instantly covering his entire body. All the rules and laws in the depths of the surrounding void trembled, as if they had encountered the most terrifying natural enemy. Boom! Accompanied by Typhon's roar, a rich dark green light erupted violently, lingering around his shrunken body, lingering in all directions in the sky, with an unparalleled filth aura, shrouding Apollo like a tidal wave. The majestic evil spirit permeated the heaven and the earth and the sky trembled at the same time. The terrifying power made the gods below tremble. Typhon still has spare strength, can he resist the god of light? Aphrodite, the god of love and beauty, had a very beautiful face full of panic. Although she is also one of the main gods of Olympus, her status is all based on her beauty, and her divine power is inferior to Hera. Can be described as the weakest main god. Facing Typhon, although the gods below were terrified, they could not understand the true horror of this father of 100 demons. Only the gods above the main god can understand how unmatched this existence is. The horror in Aphrodite's heart far surpassed that of other gods. While she was trembling, Persephone in Demeter's arms struggled out of her mother's body, staring at the sky with her pale blue eyes, her long eyelashes twinkling. Big brother Apollo is the most powerful, and he will definitely be able to defeat those 230 ugly monsters. The girl shouted in a very innocent tone. Her liveliness made the other gods blush. They are all gods who have lived for such a long age and rule the world, how can they be less courageous than a little girl? At this time, Athena, who was in uniform, raised her bright cheeks and raised her spear, saying, I can't just let Apollo fight alone, everyone follow me to deal with the monsters under Typhon. Before the gods could react, a silver-white arrow shot from a distance at the monsters such as the Sphinx under Typhon's seat. With a graceful figure and a beautiful face, Artemis, the goddess of hunting who always bears an icy chill on her cheeks towards people other than Apollo, has started to hunt monsters with determination. Wow, Goddess Artemis is so neat with arrows, she really deserves to be the elder sister of the god of light. Several young gods exclaimed in admiration. This time the gods couldn't hold their faces. First, Ares roared, holding a shield and a sword, followed Athena and rushed to the monsters. Then Themis and other gods followed suit. Fight these monsters for the honor of Olympus. The gods roared, and each piece of artifact, one after another of divine power, rushed towards many monsters. The two sides soon fell into battle. Bang! The dark green torrent surging like a tidal wave, tingling the void, filthy laws, rushing straight to Apollo like a tidal water. Apollo had foreseen this attack in advance, but Typhon's attack was too fast and all-round, and even if he had foreseen it, he could not completely avoid this attack. It had to use magic and fighting spirit to form a shield. If it was divine power, if it was contaminated with these rays of light, it would decline and collapse. Son of Zeus, you cannot escape. Typhon's 99 heads were laughing ferociously, and the dark green rays of light on his body continued to flow. While besieging Apollo, he was constantly approaching. The gods were all worried. On the contrary, the people of Delphi had full confidence in him and kept chanting his name. In the fierce confrontation, Apollo's golden eyes suddenly flickered, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. It turns out that, Typhon, I know what the essence of your dark green light is. This can pollute the power of authority and divine power, and it is also a kind of authority in essence. Suddenly, Apollo's palm spread out, the power of creation was activated, and a dark green light that was exactly the same as the outside world suddenly formed in the palm of his hand. Typhon's 198 eyes suddenly shrank. How is it possible? How can you make pollution? He couldn't believe it. In order to obtain this authority, he was burned by the fire of hell for thousands of years in the depths of the abyss, tearing his soul into 100 parts and injecting them into 100 heads. Then in the depths of the earth, in the darkest and most filthy place, it was suppressed by itself for nearly 10,000 years. Only then did he get this unique authority that was independent of fate and could restrain the authority of the king of gods and even all gods. Now the god in front of him has exercised the same authority as him. Typhon could not accept such a thing. Boom! A steady stream of filthy power appeared in Apollo's palm, pouring out into the surrounding void, and at the same time the light field on his body disappeared, replaced by the filth and darkest pollution field. I read it right, Apollo will have the same power as Typhon. The gods looked up in shock. The reason why the king of the gods and even the gods was so embarrassed in front of Typhon and his descendants. It is because of this strange dark green light that can weaken all authority and divine power. And now, Apollo has used the same power. The polluted realm showed. Apollo let go of his defenses and let Typhon's majestic dark green light invade. Two equal forces collided with a bang. There was no fierce confrontation in the imagination. The two dark green rays of light fused together like water and milk at the moment of contact, forming a whole. Impossible. Typhon's roar was full of horror, and the violent aura shook the universe. Nothing is impossible in the world. Apollo's expression was indifferent, and under the filth field, he penetrated layers of dark green light like a duck in water. The figure was like lightning, rushing towards Typhon's huge body. Boom! He punched out, and the power of ether surged. Typhon recovered from his shock. Seeing Apollo attacking at close range, he was still disdainful at first. Who does not know that the gods are weak, and their strength is all based on divine power and authority? Play melee combat with me. He wanted to laugh. But when Apollo's fist hit him and his bones cracked, his laughter turned to wailing. Bang bang bang. A series of blows rang out. In the monsters such as the Sphinx who were fighting with the gods, their eyes were dull and frozen in the air. I saw the synonym of strength and terror, the father of the great demons, the huge body, was beaten by the tiny blonde god like an ant, using his fists to come and go like a ball. Not only them, even the gods, as well as the many believers of the light in Delphi, are a little stunned. Apollo, the god of light who looks elegant and handsome, is even more monster than a monster when he hits people with his fists. However, even so, the god of light is still so handsome and elegant. Every movement is smooth and graceful. What a perfect god. Bang bang bang. Another bang. Under the numb gazes of the gods and monsters below, Typhon tragically collapsed into the sky, only 30 of the 100 heads left, and all the others were blown up. Oh, seeing you monsters with many heads, I always like to blow your heads out first, and then kill them. Apollo recalled the Hydra back then. At the same time, he asked suspiciously, if you blow up all 100 heads, will Typhon also grow 200 new heads? He remembered that Hydra had such an ability. Just when Apollo faced off against Typhon. On Mount Olympus, Zeus reconnected his limbs expressionlessly. Hermes, let's go to Delphi now, we must not let Typhon get Apollo's sword, he said. At this fit, his face suddenly changed. Typhon and Apollo have already fought. What kind of ability does Apollo have to predict all of Typhon's actions? Typhon broke out, go, get that sword before Apollo is killed by him. Well, Apollo can also use the power that can pollute the authority of the gods, and Typhon is about to fall. In a short period of time, Zeus, who had detected the battle in Delphi, changed his face again and again. The last ashes. Apollo actually also has the power of Typhon's pollution, so wouldn't he also be able to restrain his own god-king's authority? The two fought, and if Typhon prevailed, he would kill himself with that sword. If Apollo wins and can deal with the authority of the king of God, he will definitely kill himself. It's a mortal situation anyway. Father. Seeing Zeus staying motionless for a long time, Hermes whispered. Zeus woke up. Gritting his teeth, he seemed to have made a decision. To Hermes, go to Delphi first, make peace with other gods, and release the news that I'm all right. What about you? Hermes asked. With gloomy eyes, Zeus waved his hand. Don't ask so many questions, go quickly. Hermes had no choice but to exercise his authority and leave the space, tourism. After he left, Zeus' face showed ruthless determination, his eyes fixed on the direction of the goddess of fate temple. He gritted his teeth and said, this is the only way to fight Apollo and Typhon right now. As for the consequences, I'll talk about it later, I can't care about those. Saying so, Zeus turned into a bolt of lightning, heading towards the temple of the goddess of fate. Bang bang, the space burst, and the world shook. The power of the ether surged, and Apollo flashed stars all over his body, and the unparalleled power, violent winds and torrential rain fell on Typhon's huge body. The father of 100 demons roared in pain, and only 20 of the 100 heads remained. Father. The monsters such as the Sphinx below looked at him on the verge of death, and they were all terrified. The gods screamed in excitement. You monsters, have you seen it? This is the strength of Olympus, the glory of the gods, die. Under the leadership of several powerful main gods Athena, Artemis and Themis, the gods launched a general attack on the monsters. The monsters with low morale suddenly showed signs of collapse. The silver arrow of Artemis in the harpy. The Sphinx with the Sphinx was swept away by a divine light from Athena and turned into a statue. The dragon Colchis was cut off by Ares. The powerful monsters were killed or captured by the gods, and the descendants of Typhon were scattered. In the city-state of Delphi, the bright golden figure was watching, constantly crushing the ferocious monster, and the cheers of thousands of people became more and more excited. They also know that this monster defeated the king of the gods, but it is not the opponent of the god of light that they and others believe in. The great god of light, your greatness is above the king of the gods, you are the god of the gods. A believer murmured, and his voice instantly echoed in the entire crowd. Suddenly, in Delphi and even many other city-states around who saw this scene, countless humans raised their right fists and tapped their brows. Great God of light, you are the brightest star in the vast sky, you are the Lord of kindness and discernment, and you are, the God above all gods, the protector of the vast universe and all life. Your brilliance spreads over the past and the future, walking in the sky, walking in the earth, walking in the sea, walking in the hearts of all spirits. Praise the light. The loud prayers fell on the ears of every god. The gods have changed color. The god of the gods, the protector of the vast universe and all life. What a great title this is, and the king of the gods is nothing more than that. If it was before, they would definitely stand up to punish these mortals who spoke up. But at this moment, looking at the stalwart figure in the sky, they were all silent. The king of the gods has already been defeated in the hands of Typhon, just waiting for Typhon to be defeated. This god of light is afraid that he will be crowned king. Change the title in advance, it seems that there is nothing. Only a few gods such as Hera and Ares had their faces ashen. As the main god, they can still vaguely feel that Zeus's vitality still exists. If you wait for Zeus to come back, what kind of face will you look like when you hear such a prayer and honorable name? They can't imagine. But at the moment, I don't dare to stand up and say anything. God of the gods, what a big tone. Blood was flowing, and Typhon only had a dozen heads left, sobbing and sneering coldly. Apollo answered him with a splendid punch. Bang bang. Typhon exploded 2 heads again. Son of Zeus, your power is indeed above the so-called gods, but the true power of the father of the 100 demons will make all the gods fall into the eternal abyss. The intense pain caused Typhon to let out a final roar, and suddenly, his remaining dozen or so heads exploded at the same time. The endless dark green light, like an erupting volcano, will break through the world in the blink of an eye. However, a smile suddenly appeared on the corner of Apollo's mouth. I just said that Hydra has such an ability. As the source of all monsters, you must have similar. It's just a pity, the past and the future are all in my eyes, and everything you do is just repeating the picture I have seen. Suddenly, a mottled rusty sword appeared in Apollo's palm, a blazing flame began to burn, the temperature of the entire world rose in the blink of an eye, and the sky and the earth trembled at the same time. Infinite splendid flames, with monstrous destructive power, shrouded Typhon's huge body like a tidal wave. Here we go again. In the depths of the underworld, Tartarus, with a dissatisfied voice, activated his divine power to stabilize the world that was shaking because of the flaming sword. Typhon can be considered his son no matter what, and now he is defeated and dying. Instead of being able to help, he will wipe the butt of the person who killed him. Such depression, even the Lord of the Abyss is very unwilling. In the deepest part of the earth, in the majestic palace, a plump woman in a long khaki dress also suddenly opened her eyes full of chills. The son of Zeus, the god of light Apollo. I remember this name. The infinite power of the earth also surged into action, stabilizing the world shaken by the flaming sword. Like a dark world covered by a thick black dress and dotted with stars, a beautiful girl with a thin veil on her face, shrouded in the dark night, suddenly let out a chuckle. Hecate, this god of light is indeed as good as you said, the god of the gods. It is a very loud title, I don't know if he can bear it. Well, it's too much trouble, and it's going to cause trouble for us every 3 days. In the future, you have to entangle him, and let us who are connected to the world not work so hard. Her voice was like a serene serenade, echoing in the boundless night, and her great divine power radiated to the sky. Hecate, who was not far from her, first turned a little crimson on her face, and then through the infinite space, her clear eyes focused on the dazzling golden figure holding the flaming sword. His face gradually filled with thoughts and sweetness. Suddenly, she noticed a very strange thing. These few times, when several primordial gods maintained the stability of the world, the goddess of the night, the lord of the abyss, and the Mother Earth all took action. The most mysterious god of chaos, Chaos, does not talk about why the husband of the goddess of the night, Erebos, the god of darkness, never shows signs of awakening. After thinking for a while, she couldn't figure out the question. He didn't think about it anymore, and turned his attention to the battle situation outside. Boom! The flames are raging, and the infinite power of destruction ignites the universe. The flaming blade with unparalleled destructive power violently slashed Typhon's huge terrifying body. In an instant, this hideous body burst into pieces. Accompanied by the desperate roar of the father of the 100 demons, one after another, the burning sword energy, with the most blazing destructive power, cut Typhon's body into thousands of tiny pieces of flesh and blood, swayed in the air, and was burned by the flames. The picture at this moment is beautiful and dreamy. The gods and many people watched with excitement. Son of Zeus, I will perish with you. At the moment when Typhon's body shattered, a rich dark green light gushed out creepily, carrying endless resentment and filth. Indistinctly, Typhon's illusory figure appeared in the middle, with 100 hideous heads waving around. Suddenly, the burning blade slashed again. The space was torn apart, and the splendid flames with the majestic power of destruction, violently bombarded this illusory soul. Pong! With a loud shock, Typhon's soul was devoured by the blazing flames with panic and distortion. At the same time, the burning flames burned his body, which was divided into tens of thousands of pieces, into ashes one by one. The little sparks proved that there was once the father of the 100 demons, the terrifying monster who defeated the king of the gods. Under the eyes that pierce through time, everything you do is an incompetent struggle that has been repeated long ago. In the time I have seen, there are tens of thousands of possibilities for you to fight with me, but the final result of each one is that you are burned to ashes and your mark of existence is completely erased. Under the shroud of light, Apollo's eyes were deep, looking at the burning fire, and said silently, "Typhon is dead, we are victorious. The glory of Olympus, good light, smashes all monsters, and glorifies the earth. God of light, you are the pride of Olympus, the most dazzling star of the gods." The gods shouted excitedly, celebrating the arrival of new life and the glory of victory. And in the city-state of Delphi, the thousands of people who have witnessed everything call for Apollo's honorable name again. Continuous prayers echoed in the sky. God of the gods, Hermes, who had just arrived, was stunned when he heard this title. Immediately, he said angrily, "Whose lies is this, dare to call a god other than the king of the gods by this?" While he was angry, he suddenly saw the picture of Typhon being swallowed by the burning flames, and his body trembled suddenly. But he saw Apollo and the gods turned their heads to look at him. Feeling that the atmosphere was not right, he forced a smile on his face. "Everyone is okay, Typhon is also dead, that's great. Don't look at me, I'm not a deserter, I'm going to save the king of the gods. Tell you a piece of good news, our great father, the king of Olympus, has escaped his predicament, and is about to come to deal with Typhon in person. Typhon is dead, but in any case, it is a matter of time for the god king to get out of trouble. Good news. The king of the gods is free. Except for a few main gods, the gods below looked at each other in dismay, and most of them looked very strange. It seems to be a little nervous, a little complaining. Hermes was astonished. The king of the gods was out of trouble. What good news, what do you mean by this? Fortunately, Ares jumped up at this time and smiled happily. It's great that Father God is fine. I just said, how could an ugly monster like Typhon hurt the great god father? What did you do, Hermes? Very good. The other gods also squeezed out smiles and looked at Hermes with a reluctant expression. Yu Guang looked at the golden figure standing on the other side of the sky. With some regrets. Zeus, why didn't you die cleanly? You die well. How good it would be for us to have Apollo as the new king of gods. They are handsome and gentle, with good strength and temperament. What a cruel old man like you, who can't beat Typhon without saying anything, does things every day, covets our wives and daughters, and knows how to use lightning to scare people. Alas, there was no option before. Now that we have a choice, we only know what a god king is. Zeus, don't come back. The gods cursed silently in their hearts. There is also a hint of hope. Apollo also seems to be able to use Typhon's ability to restrain authority, so can Zeus still deal with him? If you can, kill him now. We want a new god king. When the gods were full of disobedience, the goddess Hera walked out of the temple with a face full of glory, looking at Hermes with great excitement. I know, the king of the gods is the greatest king in the world, he is the master of fate, the myth of invincibility and immortality. No one can beat him and kill him. That time at Olympus, he just cheated, it was a foreshadowing and preparation for a greater return. And now, he will lead the gods once again with a brand new and greater attitude, and spread the glory across the land and the sky. Quote, quote. Her passionate voice fell in the ears of many gods and received a burst of slander. This is too cover-up, too boastful. Everyone was present at the time, and he obviously lost to Typhon and was torn to pieces, which led to the fall of this Olympus. Why is it now that after you say it, it has become a well thought out, well planned, and the king has returned? All the gods wanted to laugh, but they secretly held back because of the empress's face. But there were still a few young gods who covered their mouths secretly. But Hera continued, "Since Typhon is dead and the king of the gods has returned, let's return to Olympus now and rebuild our homeland." The gods all agreed. At this time, Apollo came down from the sky and said to Hera, "Queen of gods, I was punished not to set foot on Olympus for 1,000 years, so I can't go back with you, but you forgot to promise me the position of deputy king of the court of God." Deputy lord of the court. The gods were surprised to hear the term. Hera's face turned pale, and her gorgeous eyes stared at Apollo in front of her. She is now fully aware that she has been tricked. Apollo and Typhon would have fought, and his own husband would have no need of rescue. But he knelt down in front of Apollo with the most pitiful and humiliating gesture and begged, and agreed to such a condition. "Athena, Apollo, Artemis, you must have agreed to plot against me." Hera growled inwardly, but under the watchful eyes of the gods, she was not too slow to react. He had no choice but to nod his head tremblingly. "Apollo, you killed Typhon, you have done a great job, you are not allowed to step into Olympus for thousands of years, this punishment is not counted at all. As for the deputy lord of the court, when I see the king of God, I will definitely requesting this for you." "Then thank you, Empress God." Apollo smiled lightly, and a dark green light appeared in his palm. Hera's eyes trembled suddenly. This is the power of Typhon to pollute the authority of the gods, and it is in this trick that her husband Zeus was defeated. Apollo also had such power. If he repented, would he immediately turn his face and rebel? No, I want to stabilize him. Isn't it the position of a deputy emperor of the court? Give him that. With deep fear, Hera squeezed out a smile and said, "I am the queen of the gods, sharing the authority of the king of the gods. The promise I made is the promise of the king of the gods, Apollo, the most splendid of the gods. Vice Lord, follow me to Olympus to be crowned." Apollo then restrained the dark green light in his hand. A pair of golden eyes were slightly wrinkled and focused in the direction of the goddess of fate temple. When he dealt with Typhon, he sensed that the breath of Zeus seemed to enter there. And after that, there were very terrifying and deep fluctuations. It seems that Zeus still has a trump card. Typhon's pollution, authority may not be enough to deal with him. Apollo murmured softly in his heart. And many gods are restless. Deputy Lord of the Court of God, I have heard that goddess Hecate is the deputy lord of Hades, assisting Hades in handling matters of Hades, second only to His Majesty Hades in Hades. Then Lord Apollo, the deputy monarch, is assisting the god king in managing the affairs of Olympus. No, then it's called the deputy lord of Olympus. This is the deputy lord of the court of God, not only Olympus, but also has jurisdiction over the ocean and the underworld in theory. After all, Olympus, the ocean, and the underworld are all of the court of God, component. Isn't that almost equal to the sea king in Hades, second only to the god king? The gods were shocked to discuss DB one after another. At this moment, Artemis, the goddess of hunting with long silver hair and shining bright, walked in front of Hera with a rare faint smile. "God, you forgot another condition. I am still waiting for the beautiful Aphrodite to become Apollo's wife." Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, who was originally standing beside her, who was indifferent to all kinds of things, suddenly widened her beautiful eyes, staring at Hera with an expression of disbelief, staring at Apollo. The gods were also in an uproar. Ares exclaimed, "Artemis, what nonsense, how could the mother promise to marry Aphrodite to Apollo?" Even when he learned that Apollo would become the deputy emperor of the court, he was not so excited. At the same time, Hermes on the other side also changed his face, and said unwillingly, "Aphrodite is the brightest pearl among the gods, and no one can decide her ownership like this." All the male gods were very emotional. On the contrary, many goddesses nodded. A beautiful woman like Sister Aphrodite is indeed only worthy of a person like Lord Apollo. Well, it's a perfect match. It's a pity that I don't have the beauty of Aphrodite. Otherwise, I'll have to snatch up Lord Apollo with her. What a good match. Lord Apollo is so handsome and handsome, Aphrodite is just a good-looking slut. What qualifications does he have to match Lord Apollo? I am also against this marriage, and should let me marry Lord Apollo. The goddesses half agreed, half locked on Aphrodite with jealous eyes. "Shut up," Hera roared, scolding all the gods. Then he looked at the dazed Aphrodite, and said lightly, "I have promised this matter, and it just so happens that Apollo doesn't have a wife yet. After returning to the court of God, Aphrodite, you will be ready to marry him. Apollo's marriage. Compared to the position of the deputy lord of the court, a goddess is nothing to her at all. Besides, she had already seen Aphrodite disliked, so it would be good to deal with it. Seeing Hera's decision, although Ares and other male gods were full of jealousy, they bowed their heads helplessly. Artemis walked over to Aphrodite with a satisfied smile. Sister Aphrodite, we will be a family from now on. My sister will take good care of you and give birth to some beautiful children for Apollo as soon as possible. There was a smile on her face though. But when Aphrodite heard it, she was filled with a bad chill, as if she was going to stare at her, and she must be a good wife. And in terms of age, you were born less than 100 years ago, but I have lived for tens of thousands of years. Why am I calling you sister? Aphrodite was confused and at a loss, and turned her eyes to Apollo not far away. Looking at the golden figure who was about to become her husband, her cheeks couldn't help but turn red. Well, he is indeed a very handsome man. Moreover, he is powerful and has never had any bad temper, so marrying him is indeed a good choice. But this feeling of being forced is still not good. Aphrodite was confused. Well, Typhon is dead. As soon as he stepped into the temple of the goddess of fate, Zeus' face changed. Although he had expected such a situation, when Typhon was actually killed, his heart was still trembling. That was the most crucial opportunity for him to be promoted to the primordial god. So killed by Apollo, bloody pain filled his heart. At the door of the goddess of fate temple, he growled lowly. The three goddesses of fate turned their heads and looked at him with pitiful eyes. Their eldest sister Atropos said hoarsely, "Why are you here now to do that? I need to remind you that this is very dangerous and will completely change your stable destiny. If there was a choice, I would never do it, but I have no choice." Zeus gritted his teeth and quickly walked to the depths of the temple of fate. The empty hall was dim, and a few candles swayed in the darkness, barely illuminating the gloom. The dead space is full of deep depression, vaguely, as if a heart is beating. Boom, bang bang, bang bang bang. The continuous heartbeat, like a muffled drum, is low and long, making people feel depressed and frightened. Zeus slowly walked into this dark temple. He stared at the place where the muffled sound came from. Close to the past. Suddenly, an indifferent and majestic voice rang out. "The god king of the younger generation, I know you will come to me." Zeus stopped abruptly and sneered. "Do you think that means you have everything under control? If I hadn't been here, I wouldn't have heard it. And as long as you come here and hear your words, it seems very high level, but this is actually the same trick used by deceitful fortune tellers among mortals." Quote. Suddenly, he locked on the source of the sound. It was a fuzzy ball of light, about the size of 2 fists, that kept beating in the dark corner. Aware of Zeus' gaze, the ball of light suddenly flew up and said indifferently, "The god king of the younger generation. You can still argue with your tongue. But I have learned from the web of fate that you are in great trouble now. You need my help." The words of the light ball silenced Zeus. His face was gloomy, and it took a while before he spoke. "That's true, but isn't that what you expected?" Zeus sneered. "Yeah, I've been waiting for this day for a long time. From Uranus to Cronus, and then from Cronus to you, me, fate and the king of the gods are inseparable." The light ball's voice was still indifferent, but it carried some memories and excitement. "I don't want to hear about you, about fate, and the ignorant era before the first generation of God's court, these histories and pasts. I just want you to help me now." Zeus' eyes were full of ferocity and determination. "Don't worry, you are also helping me." A faint smile came from the ball of light, and then the voice became dark and cold. "After all, without you, as soon as I leave this temple shrouded in destiny, I will immediately alert Chaos's eyes, and he will not let me go. I still don't understand what kind of grievance you have with the god of chaos." Zeus's tone was puzzled. Suddenly, the strange light group that was beating non-stop suddenly stopped in the air. An icy and deep chill instantly filled the entire hall. "Chaos, he is a traitor. He betrayed us." The deep voice, with a deep hatred, echoed in the empty hall for a long time. Zeus didn't dare to ask any more questions. He walked out of the apse with the light group and came to the spinning bed of the 3 goddesses of destiny. Looking at him and that light group, the 3 goddesses of fate sighed. "This day has finally come. King of the gods, you should understand that when he is released, the awakening of destiny will not be far away, and you will be the first sacrifice." Listening to their words, the light ball said with a low smile, "He may not wait until that day. After all, although I used his hand to get rid of the old things and avoid chaos attention, I always want to find him to get back what belongs to me, powerful." He just sneered at Zeus and looked at the three goddesses of fate. "Don't say more, let's start." I saw that he suddenly made a bloody slit in front of his thigh. As Yin Hongshan's blood dripped, he grabbed the light ball and stuffed it into his thigh. Immediately, the three goddesses of fate took out a few silk threads from the spinning wheel and sewed up Zeus's thigh with a needle. While they were going on, Zeus sneered at his thighs and said, "Fade away the old one, and with the help of my bloodline regeneration, you may not be able to find the past again, then you will always be just one of my sons. Then you'd better expect this: my power is not so easy to possess, and the position of the king of the gods should belong to me." The light group that was gradually stitched made its final beating, and the voice solemnly and lowly declared, "I will be born from your thigh, I will find the sanctity in the madness, from the glory of the past to the new glory, at the end of the world, I will replace everything you have, and be crowned king again." Back at Olympus, the face of the gods suddenly changed from joy to grief. I saw the magnificent home in the past, now in a mess. Under the raging monsters, the majestic temples were destroyed to pieces. In the past, the dreamy clouds and mists that were entangled in the towering sacred mountain were also blown away by the hurricane. The flowers and green grass that once filled the entire sacred mountain were all reduced to ashes under the fire of war. The corpses of many gods and nymphs stink on the roadside and in the ruins, and there are also filth left by monsters. The immortal mountain has become a ruin. Hera said with an ugly face, "Hephaestus, let your god give me the fastest speed to rebuild Olympus." Her crippled son, the most skilled craftsman of the gods, stooped and nodded. Most of the gods also began to get busy, to rebuild their former homes. Only a few main gods stood above Olympus, silently watching the situation everywhere. At this time, a team came from a distance. The leader has black eyes and black hair, and is wearing a brown short skirt, which can hardly hide the graceful figure of the girl. The white calf is exposed, and it is creamy and attractive. "Gods of Olympus, I am under the order of His Majesty Hades to visit Olympus and bring some help." The girl's quiet voice came to Apollo's ears, and he smiled and looked over. "Long time no see." Hecate's green and tender body seemed to be more mature, and the originally slightly undulating peaks gradually grew in size. His dark hair fell like a waterfall on his shoulders, his delicate facial features were clean and elegant, and a pair of clear eyes stared at him with a soft, resentful expression. Hera stepped forward and said with a sneer, "When we faced Typhon, Hades didn't send anyone to help, and now that Typhon has fallen, you guys came quickly." Hecate said lightly, "All this is in accordance with the instructions of His Majesty Hades. If there is anything, Goddess Hera, you should go to him and ask him clearly." As he spoke, he commanded the gods of the underworld that he brought behind him to help Olympus rebuild. On the other side, Yin walked to Apollo. Hera said angrily, "Is your Hades attitude like this? Don't forget, Hades is also a part of the court of God. Hades, the Hades, is also under the jurisdiction of Zeus." Katakana middle. 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 Queen of gods, Hecate has already said that if you have any opinions, you can go directly to Hades. She just came here on orders. Apollo came over and looked at Hera silently. Under his golden eyes, this goddess immediately looked like a deflated ball, staring blankly but unable to speak. Apollo let out a low laugh, gave Hecate a look, and the two quietly came to the Temple of Light in Olympus. Perhaps due to the absence of the gods, the Temple of Apollo was not affected by the war and remained relatively intact. "HMPH, you said back then that you were going to see me in the underworld. I've been hearing from you for so long, and you haven't inquired about me at all." As soon as he entered the temple, Hecate crooked his nose and snorted coldly. "Isn't it always out of time? You know my situation at Olympus," Apollo explained. "It's all excuses. I just heard that you are going to marry Aphrodite. Isn't she beautiful?" Hecate stared at the golden figure in front of her with angry eyes. Apollo sighed. This is my elder sister who arranged for me. You only heard that I was going to marry Aphrodite, but you didn't know that I was about to become the deputy lord of the court. Why is the position of deputy lord? Of course. In order to match you, the deputy king of the underworld. Lying nonsense. Although Hecate hummed, the expression on his face softened a lot. You male gods are all the same radishes, and I can only find the best-looking radishes in a group of radishes. Okay, who made you look so good-looking? She suddenly got close to Apollo and hugged him gently. Clearly smelling the faint fragrance on her body, Apollo suddenly raised his face. A bunch of radishes, you know many male gods in the underworld. Bah, how can there be any male god in the underworld? Hecate cried. Her eyes were serious, and she pointed her fingers and said one by one, what Charon, Eurynomus, Perseus, all look like broken watermelons, that is, the Thanatos and Hypnos brothers. And Pluto, it's not bad. But one of them knows to sleep all day, and the other has a gloomy face all the time. As for Hades. Her eyes paused. Apollo asked, what happened to Hades? Hecate said in a low voice, I once asked him why the empress of the underworld has not been established yet, knowing that the number of descendants of the god king and the sea emperor is comparable to the entire number of gods in the underworld. How did he answer? He said that he wants to be the king of the gods. And every king of the gods has a destiny to be overthrown by his own son, so he doesn't plan to marry a wife or have children. Ha, his reason is very interesting. Apollo smiled. Hecate laughed and asked, I think you are the son of the god king who was destined to overthrow him, and you will become the god king in the future. Do you want to learn this trick too? Apollo blinked. Hades' statement is very problematic. Sometimes having a wife does not mean that you must have children. Without a wife, you may not have children. Just like Athena, she was born in the head of Zeus. In the future, he may have a child born from his thigh. Why did the goddess promise to give Aphrodite to Apollo? In the huge palace, Ares roared angrily, his figure like a thunderbolt. Yeah, the two of us pursued Aphrodite for so many years, but failed to succeed, but in the end, Apollo was cheap. It's so hateful. Hermes also looked gloomy. The two looked at each other and sighed at the same time. It's been several days since Father God returned to Olympus, and now there are rumors that Godfather has actually fallen, and threatened to establish Apollo as the new god king. Hermes gritted his teeth. These fools, who were not respectful to the father in the past, now show their true colors. I want to kill them. Ares growled and drew his sword. Hermes stopped him. Are you crazy? Apollo's strength can even kill Typhon, and now that Father God hasn't come back, if you go to deal with him, wouldn't you be courting death? 230. Ares froze and slumped on the ground. What do you say? Apollo's arrogance is too arrogant now, and the mother goddess is useless, and she doesn't even have the courage to face him. The thought of Aphrodite's white, tender and delicate body is about to be beaten. If he defiles, I will fight him hard. The god of war angrily stabbed his sword on the ground. At this time, Hermes rolled his eyes and said mysteriously, I have a way to deal with Apollo, but I need your cooperation. Ares came to the spirit and asked with bright eyes, what can I do? Tell me quickly. Don't worry, you go to the Apollo temple of light to hide first, and then I'll talk when I'm ready. Hermes smiled. Ares didn't think much, pulled the sword on the ground, and hurried out. Looking at his back, Hermes sneered. It's really deceiving, so I want to covet Aphrodite. But when I think about Apollo and him later, I'm really smart. Smiling like this, he activated the authority of travel, and came to Aphrodite's palace. Hermes, why are you here? Aphrodite blinked her beautiful eyes and aimed at the figure that appeared. She has many suitors in Olympus, the most important of which are Ares, the god of war and the messenger of the gods. However, she knew that her status was a result of her beauty, and facing all suitors, she used hanging methods. Have maintained a good relationship, but just don't take advantage of them. In this way, she maintained her honorable position in Olympus, becoming the only 12 gods who were not children or wife of Zeus. But this life is coming to an end. Apollo. Recalling the golden figure in her mind, she was blushing and angry. Hermes said with a light smile, you haven't talked to us these days, is it because you are going to marry Apollo? Oh, You care so much about him, yet he hooks up with that little girl Hecate and doesn't care about you at all. If I marry you, I will treat you as the most precious treasure and take good care of you." Full of sadness. Hermes, stop talking. Aphrodite glared at him and pointed at the doorway. "Don't come to me again in the future." Hermes walked away sheepishly. After he left, Aphrodite looked at her beautiful and solemn self in the mirror, and tears suddenly flowed from the corner of her eyes. She held on to the table and said in pain, "Apollo, you are indeed a handsome god, elegant and powerful, but you don't love me at all." "Yes, of course, a noble god like you doesn't think I have such a good skin. But her heart is dissolute, and she likes to use many male gods who are pursuing her to seek power and position. You don't know how difficult it is to gain a foothold in Olympus as a foreign god who has no blood relationship with the gods of Olympus. They are all family, and I am just an outsider. For so many years, I can only use my beauty to deal with these evil wolves, using them without letting them succeed. Do you know how difficult it is for me? No, you people have never only seen me beautiful." Quote, quote. Aphrodite spoke with grief, but her mind recalled that day decades ago. It was the day he and his sister first went to Olympus. Hermes introduced the gods to him. Under his short golden hair, his bright eyes carried praise and boasted of his beauty. At that time, I only thought that this was a handsome and elegant young god. I didn't expect to be my husband now. And he doesn't actually like him. Everything at the beginning now seems to be disguised. He has the beautiful and caring sister Artemis, who chats, laughs and flirts with Athena, and has a close relationship with the goddess of the stars, Astraea, and now the smart and lovely Hecate. He knew that he was going to marry him, but he didn't even say a word to him these days. "Apollo, it would be great if you could always look at me with the same eyes," she muttered sadly. Just when she was sad, Hermes whispered to the blonde boy with wings next to her in the corner, "Eros, you see, your mother doesn't like Apollo and is sad about marrying him." Woolen cloth. The little god of love, Eros, who was carrying a bow and arrow, looked at his mother's sad expression, and gritted his teeth. "You were right, it's all because of Apollo, that's why the mother is in such pain these 2 days. And the only way to save your mother's pain is to keep her from marrying Apollo." Hermes said solemnly. "But Apollo is very powerful. Typhon was so terrifying that he was killed by him. He wants his mother to marry him. What can we do?" Eros' face was full of distress. "Of course we can't force him not to marry, but we can ask him to withdraw, for example, let him fall in love with others madly." Hermes said with a low smile. "Well, do you want me to use the golden arrow of love?" Eros widened his eyes and shook his head hurriedly. "No, my mother told me not to use the golden arrow of love at will." "Then we have to watch her go on sad." Hermes sighed softly, and quietly activated the power of deception. "I don't care that much, but she is your mother who loves you the most. Do you really want to see her continue to be sad like this?" Hermes' voice was full of bewitching power, and it kept echoing in Eros' mind. The little face of the little god of love twisted, and gradually the little hand hesitantly touched the golden bow and arrow on his body. "This is an artifact with terrible magic. Only he can use it. The arrow feathers of love can make anyone madly in love with another person. Even Zeus, the king of the gods, was once recruited, and it was difficult to get rid of it. Because the power of this artifact is so terrifying, and it is in the hands of a deity like him who is mentally ill and will always stay in his youth. So the gods used to be afraid of him. Later, his mother strictly restricted him from using the golden arrow of love. But this time it was for the mother. As long as she is no longer sad, even if she is scolded, it doesn't matter." Thinking so, he gritted his teeth and looked at Hermes. "Okay, I promise you." Seeing him nodding in agreement, Hermes showed a smug smile on his face. "Everything is under control. Apollo, Ares, you people are all vulgar brute with only one strength. How can a smart person like me be so powerful, and you will lose your face in the future? When Godfather returns like this, he will definitely praise me heavily." In front of the majestic temple, Hermes and Ares carefully concealed their breath. Staring into the distance, Hermes said, "Ares, wait until you see the light of the arrows shot from me later, and you will get in front of Apollo, as long as you do this." "What's your plan?" Ares was very puzzled and felt very unreliable. "Trust me, anyway, it's just in front of him, what else can he look at?" Hermes said with a light smile. "Okay, I believe you this time, but you'd better not play tricks on me. Threatening, Ares hid carefully. Looking at his back, Hermes' mouth curled into a smile. Immediately fly to the other side. The blonde boy with wings was holding his bow and arrow, waiting nervously. Hermes came to him with a faint smile. Are you ready? He asked. Eros nodded, put the golden arrow of love on the bow, and aimed in the direction of the Temple of Light. According to my observations in the past few days, Apollo would come out at this time every day to go out with Hecate in the underworld, and then you will follow my orders and shoot him with an arrow. Hermes ordered. Well, little love god nodded at first, and then his face became somewhat puzzled. After being shot by my arrow, he will fall in love with the first person he sees, but there is no one else here. With Apollo's strength, he will definitely notice after the arrow is hit, and he only needs to block his vision at that time. Vision is indispensable to mortal things, but the spirit of the gods can see things much more clearly than vision, and then he will come over to teach us. Little Eros was a little scared. Don't worry, Hermes smiled lightly, I have everything arranged, you just need to do as I tell you. But he was laughing wildly in his heart. The golden arrow of love is also useful for the same, but I want to see what kind of scene Apollo you will fall in love with Ares. When he gave orders here, the confinement temple in the distance suddenly opened. The golden figure of Apollo appeared on the road. Hermes hurriedly said, Get ready, we have to shoot from a distance, otherwise when he approaches, he will definitely find us. Saying so, Eros took aim carefully. Well, walking on the road, Apollo's expression suddenly changed. A smile suddenly appeared on the corner of his mouth, and he murmured, I said that people have been watching outside my temple these days, so that's what happened. He walked slowly to the middle of the road. And in the woods in the distance, among the grass and trees, Hermes' face condensed, and he said to the little love god, Eros, it is now. Eros, who held the bowstring tightly, stared at the distant target with bright eyes, and the golden arrow suddenly left the string. Hearing a whoosh sound, the arrow hit Apollo in the middle of the road. Immediately, Ares on the other side shouted and jumped out and walked to Apollo. Seeing this scene, Hermes laughed out loud. Apollo, Apollo, you are still designed by me. I want to record the ugly state of your courtship with Ares so that the gods can watch. What, the person you prepared as Ares? Eros, the little god of love, widened his eyes and trembled a little. He thought that Hermes had arranged for a goddess to wait there, so that when Apollo fell in love with another goddess, he would not embarrass his mother. But how could it be Ares now? Suddenly, he realized that he had been deceived. I am the god of deception, the protector of thieves, you can believe my words, you can only blame you for being stupid. Hermes laughed and jumped into the road. Eros froze in place, his hands and feet trembling. What should I do? Even I can't lift the magic of the golden arrow of love. If I just fall in love with a goddess, it's nothing. If Apollo falls in love with Ares, he will definitely kill me, and in order to avenge his mother, he will kill me. It will never cancel the marriage. Eros stood there in fear, the bow and arrow in his hand trembling. At this time, Hermes, who jumped proudly to the center of the road, suddenly changed his face. What about Apollo? Where did the others go? His roar alarmed Ares, and Ares grabbed his head and shouted angrily, It was the golden arrow of love just now, you called me, but let Eros shoot Apollo with the golden arrow of love. What does it mean? No, this is definitely a problem. How could Apollo suddenly disappear? Hermes murmured, suddenly feeling a chill behind his back, as if he had been stabbed by something sharp. Reach out and touch it, but it is a golden arrow. This is the golden arrow of love. Hermes' face turned pale, and he hurriedly covered his eyes. At this time, Ares just came to him angrily and knocked him down with a punch. Two people, four eyes, big eyes staring at small eyes. Immediately, Hermes screamed. The scream didn't last long. It quickly turned into a fiery compliment. Ares, so you are so manly, I never found your charm before. Come, take my hand, and let's go to the father together. Looking at the fiery Hermes in front of him, Ares shuddered. He turned his head and wanted to leave, but in terms of speed, he was Hermes' opponent, and he was caught at once. Ares, don't go, I like you so much, let's make a private life here. Hermes hugged him with a face full of intoxication. Go away, Ares roared angrily, pushing Hermes away with all his might. But soon Hermes got entangled again, and the two chased at Olympus like this. Eros in the woods looked at this scene in astonishment. How could this be? My arrow did not hit Apollo, but Hermes instead. He was a little confused. Suddenly I remembered and said, if Hermes was hit by an arrow, where did Apollo go? Are you looking for me? A cold voice came from behind him. Eros turned his head and saw a blonde figure shrouded in light standing in the dense vegetation. Ah, Apollo. Eros looked at the person tremblingly. Yes, I'm sorry, I was deceived by Hermes to shoot you with an arrow. Little love god said tremblingly. My wife's child who is about to come, do you think it's useful to just say sorry when you do something wrong? Apollo's low voice echoed in Eros' ears. Suddenly, little love god felt a vast divine might, like a starry sky, crushing on him. His slender body couldn't hold it anymore and fell on the soil. Ha! Apollo let out a light hum. The golden eyes suddenly burst into bright light, and the eye of omniscience opened. He stared at Eros in front of him, constantly tracing his past. I saw that in the long river of time, a dazzling eye suddenly appeared, looking at him across the endless years. Boom! A majestic force pushed Apollo out of time. Those eyes. Apollo's face became solemn. It is possible to see his retrospect across infinite time, and push him out of the long river of time. Such existence must be the realm above the Lord God. Suddenly, he remembered that in Greek mythology, there is a record about a primordial god also called Eros. It was a god who ruled over love and lust. Could it be that there really exists such a primordial god in this world, and Eros also has a deep relationship with him? Think about it, the magic power of the golden arrow of love, even the ninth order attack of the Lord God can't get rid of it. If I didn't foresee the future and reacted in advance, the consequences of the arrow would not be known. Of course, its sharpness might not be able to break through the defense of my etheric body. But its magic is terrifying, there is no doubt that it came from a primordial god. What's more, although Aphrodite has always claimed that Eros is his son, but only a little experience of flowers, who can't see that this seemingly debauched god of love and beauty is still a virgin. There must be another reason. Thinking like this, he lifted up the little love god who was shivering and fainted under his divine might. Staring at the sky with golden eyes, Apollo murmured, the five primordial gods, after all, are only the words of this era. Perhaps the primordial gods born at the beginning of the world are far more than these, but the ones who have survived to the present are only these five. As for the others, they are naturally completely buried in the ignorant era that can't be traced back even through a long river of time. While he was whispering here, the pursuit of Hermes and Ares in the distance continued. The two main gods exerted all their strength, and the powerful divine power instantly shook the entire Olympus. One by one the gods were shocked. Then, with dull eyes, he looked at the usually graceful messenger of the gods, constantly chasing after the god of war for love. The gods looked at each other, all dumbfounded. I'm not mistaken. Hermes' messenger is actually pursuing Lord Ares, I must be hallucinating. Yeah, it's definitely wrong. We've all fallen into illusions, but who is so daring to make such a joke on the two main gods? Ha, ha ha. Hey, you people, since you know it's an illusion, why are you laughing? Ha ha. I couldn't hold back. Many male gods scrambled to whisper, their tongues tied with laughter. The goddesses have different expressions. Some were blushing, some were shocked, others were full of anger, or laughed. Oh, I really didn't expect Lord Hermes to be so good at this. Wow, Lord Hermes is such a handsome character. Why do you like Ares, a barbarian? It's a pity that I had a crush on him before. Now it seems that Lord Apollo is better. Some goddesses cried. Sister, you don't know, the love between the opposite is greedy for the other's body, only the same is true love, which just proves how firm Hermes is in the pursuit of love. A goddess comforted. Cut, don't talk nonsense, the two male gods are so disgusting. There are also goddesses with disgust on their faces, as if they saw something dirty. Apollo, what's the situation? Hecate walked up to Apollo in surprise, and her eyes widened when she saw the situation below. Apollo smiled lightly and threw Eros out of his hand. It's all because of his arrows, please send him to Aphrodite and tell her that I will find her. Hecate's nose wrinkled suddenly and hummed, I don't want to see her, and she definitely doesn't like me. Don't dare to see her now, won't you be able to manage her in the future? Apollo blinked. I can't control her. Hecate blushed suddenly and said sullenly, what did you say? Why should I care about her? Having said that, she lifted Eros on the ground with a magic spell, turned and ran to the Temple of Beauty. What are you doing? The disaster of Typhon has just been settled, the king of gods has not yet returned, and you are all making noise here and there. Hera was alarmed by the noisy voice of the gods, and she came out angrily, scolding her when she spoke. The gods silently parted their way, revealing the figures of Hermes and Ares. Hera froze there, her glamorous cheeks froze. The mother god save me, Hermes is crazy, pestering me to woo. Ares seems to see a life-saving straw, struggling to ask Hera for help. Don't go, let's go together. Hermes grabbed him again. Hera's face was ashen. Don't you think it's not enough for Olympus to lose face? She roared and called the gods to separate the two. But Hermes and Ares are both main gods, with powerful divine powers, and the gods were blown away by the force of their collision as soon as they approached. So angry that Hera stomped her feet, she wanted to go up by herself, but she was worried about the face of the gods. After looking around for a long time, I found that the gods who were disturbed were all ordinary gods, and none of the main gods appeared. I don't believe they weren't disturbed, they must be hiding in their temples and watching, but they won't come out to help and watch my jokes. Hera was very sad. After she was dignified with gods, she could not find a single available main god beside her now. If it was before, there was no need for other gods at all, and the husband could split two people with a thunderbolt. Zeus, where are you now? When Hera murmured, the sky suddenly sounded with bursts of thunder. Apollo stood in the distance, his golden eyes narrowed abruptly, looking at the vast sky. I saw the vast expanse of the sky, and I don't know when thousands of bright lightning flashed. This is Zeus. Hera's eyes turned red, staring at the sky. The gods, who were still watching the excitement, were also suddenly alarmed and stared at the sky with awe. I saw the endless electric arc wandering and interweaving, and a stalwart figure appeared faintly, taking the shape of the void. The thunder turned into a robe, and weaved a majestic face. As the thunder shook, the lightning spear shone brightly, and the majestic aura swept the sky, revealing the supreme aura that looked down upon the gods. My subjects, your king has returned. Standing in the sky, Zeus uttered a low drink in high spirits. The gods were astounded by his vast aura. They could feel that after the defeat of Typhon, the power of the king of the gods seemed to be much stronger than before. But at this moment, the tender voice of Hermes came from below. Ares, God the Father is here, let's ask God the Father to be a witness and set our eternal love. Zeus's majestic face twitched. Father, save me, Ares shouted to Zeus. Zeus came back to his senses after a while, looking at Hermes' appearance, his eyes flashed suddenly, and he said solemnly, Golden arrow of love. Suddenly, he struck down a bolt of lightning, hitting the top of Hermes' head. The messenger of the gods was instantly scorched black, and stood blankly in place. Ares hurriedly took the opportunity to leave. At this time, Hermes seemed to regain some sense, staring at Zeus in the sky tremblingly, and said intermittently, Yes. Ah, Apollo. Zeus' eyes suddenly turned cold as he looked at the blonde figure standing in the distance. Apollo also stared at him with icy eyes, and his figure flashed, appearing beside Hermes. You, what are you doing? The messenger of the gods trembled, not daring to look directly at the golden figure in front of him. You tried to plot against me with the golden arrow of love, and letting yourself be shot by the arrow is your own retribution, but I haven't punished you yet. Apollo said lightly. A force of light suddenly enveloped Hermes. Stop. As soon as the expression of Zeus in the sky changed, he was about to stop it. But Apollo, as expected, grabbed Hermes and appeared on the other side of the sky. This is the authority of travel, he will do so. Zeus's pupils shrank, and he was surprised when he recognized that Apollo had just used the authority of Hermes. At this moment, Apollo held Hermes, stood icy in the sky, overlooking the gods, making an indifferent voice. Hermes offends my majesty, and I punish him in the name of the main god of Olympus and the deputy king of the court. The gods haven't had time to react. He saw that Apollo grabbed Hermes' body with one hand and the faint wing on his left with the other. Hiss! Along with the tearing sound and the wailing of Hermes, his proud wings were ripped off with blood. Apollo, you are too presumptuous. Zeus was furious, and the lightning struck again in his hand. But Apollo once again foreseen his actions, and appeared in another corner of the sky with Hermes. The hands work again. Hiss. Hermes' right wing was also torn off with blood. The gods looked at this scene in shock, and their mouths grew big. It turns out that it was Hermes who wanted to use the golden arrow of love to plot against Lord Apollo, but he was shot by himself. He really deserved it. Master Apollo is so domineering. He actually tore off Hermes' wings in front of everyone and the god king. I have to say that such an elegant appearance of Lord Apollo adds a little more charm. I am jealous of Aphrodite again, not because she looks prettier than me, but why let her be like this? Get Lord Apollo. Aphrodite, deputy lord of the court of God, what is the situation? Zeus's angry face frowned, but he didn't have time to think much, and his eyes were cold and locked to where Apollo was in the sky. Apollo, put down Hermes and admit your mistake to me, or I will definitely beat you into Tartarus this time. Put it down, do you mean this? Apollo smiled lightly, and suddenly threw his arm, smashing Hermes onto the temple of Olympus. Okay, bang. Only a loud noise was heard, symbolizing the majesty of Zeus, and the temple of the king, which had not been destroyed even in the Typhon rebellion, suddenly collapsed. Hermes was also buried inside. Olympus fell silent for a moment. In the sky, Zeus's face became very calm, as if the sea was as calm as the sky before the storm came. Lightning streaks roamed like snakes, the sky was gradually covered with countless thunders, and the whole world became pitch black in an instant. The gods didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Just because at the next moment, thunder bursts out, and divine punishment comes. Apollo, I was wrong earlier, you will not be imprisoned in Tartarus. I will hang you in the sky with chains, every day, every night, every moment, with the cruelest thunder strikes your body and your soul. Until eternity, eternity, the end. Zeus's voice was full of coldness, majesty, and confidence. He stepped out of the temple of the goddess of destiny again, confident that he could suppress everything. Then I expect that your strength is proportional to your threat. Apollo smiled lightly, his golden eyes twinkling brightly. Suddenly, monstrous thunder and infinite light crashed into the sky. The lightning is splendid, carrying the unparalleled will to destroy, and violently ravaging the sky. The light is brilliant, the sacred color covers the vast sky, and illuminates the cosmic galaxy. Just the collision, the two vast and mighty forces made the entire Olympus tremble, and the terrifying waves were turbulent in all directions. Boom! Zeus's eyes contained divine power, and the lightning spear in his hand roared, and the thunder and lightning poured down to where Apollo was. Wherever they pass, all things die, and the void shatters. It is the most terrifying power of destruction, the power of divine punishment. Twilight judgment. Apollo's golden eyes bloomed, standing in the light, solemnly announcing the coming of the twilight of judgment. The deep twilight instantly dyed the sky, like a night symbolizing death, sounding the horn of the end, bringing the final judgment at the end of the light. The power of the drowsy dusk, with the ultimate anger of light, is intertwined with the thunder. Buzz. The first thing they couldn't bear was not the two fighting figures, but the space they stepped on and the order they covered. Thunder and lightning collided with dusk, like the most terrifying catastrophe, the most irresistible will, making the space obliterate and making the law retreat. The world must give in to these two forces. Is this the great power at the top of the gods? The gods trembled. They are also the gods of the same Olympus, but in front of these two terrifying forces, they feel as weak as humble ants. As long as there is an aftermath, a divine power, it may even be a gaze. The existence of those two stalwarts can obliterate them. At the moment of the gods, no one dared to make a sound, and no one dared to make an argument. Great terror filled their hearts. This even includes major gods such as Ares and Hera. There are only a few powerful beings ranked in the middle and upper ranks of the main god, who have the courage and ability to look directly at this duel. In the temple of the goddess of wisdom, the goddess of victory, Nike, surrounded her main god, the goddess of wisdom with dazzling eyes, with trembling eyes. The strength of the god king seems to be much stronger than when facing Typhon. And Apollo, he seems to be equally terrifying. This wise and closest comrade in arms, the outstanding goddess who symbolizes victory, was full of fear at this moment. The level of their power has really touched the realm of the original, unless a few gods of the original, under the original, even the Pluto, the Sea Emperor, the original Sea God, and the Lord of the Mountains are inferior to them. Athena said calmly, her bright eyes without waves focused on the golden figure in the distance. It's only been so many years, you have completely surpassed me. It seems that I want you to obediently call me sister, I don't know when it will be. There was a smile on the corner of the girl's mouth. Boom. The thunder roared and the dusk roared, and the two vast forces collided thousands of times in an instant, destroying the void into nothingness and destroying the order into disorder. With the dazzling electric light lingering, Zeus looked indifferent, suddenly put down the lightning spear in his hand, raised his right hand, and activated the authority of the God King. The vast power is like the boundless sky, pouring out to where Apollo is. Ha, you should know that I learned this from Typhon, right? Apollo smiled lightly, and the authority of creation was activated, creating the authority of pollution. The darkest and most filthy dark green light instantly expanded in the void. This seems to be the natural enemy of the law, the silverfish of fate, and the nemesis of all authority. Under the illumination of the dark green light, Zeus's divine king authority suddenly lost its effectiveness. DB. Not good. Hera's face became extremely nervous. She was afraid that Apollo could restrain her husband's divine king authority, so that her husband would repeat his defeat in the face of Typhon. The other gods also held their breaths. If Zeus could not fight against Apollo, who could restrain the authority of the king of gods, then the sky of Olympus would probably change from now on. Maybe you and others should immediately fall to Apollo and support him to become the new king of the gods. As if feeling the thoughts of the gods, Zeus sneered in the sky, staring at the golden figure in the light far away with his icy eyes. Is this what you're relying on? It's so ridiculous. The greatness of the king of the gods is not something you and Typhon can conjecture. I will use absolute power to defeat your self-confidence and defeat everything you have. Suddenly, Zeus put away the lightning spear and opened his arms to the sky, his expression extremely serious. Apollo's eyes flashed. Under the eye of omniscience, he saw the thigh of Zeus' right leg, which suddenly trembled, and a strange force gushed out. At the same time, a vast force that was ancient and great, dominated everything, and surpassed the past, suddenly burst out from Zeus' body. The turbulence swept over where Apollo was. Boom. The dark green light that was enough to restrain all authority was suppressed and annihilated in the blink of an eye. In front of this power, all the divine power and authority in this world are like lowly courtiers meeting the supreme king. All bowed, but I have more than authority and power. Apollo's eyes flickered, as if he had foreseen it long ago. A burning sword appeared in his hand, and at the same time, the power of ether surged, and the light of the stars shone. Pong! The flaming sword light is like a meteor, smashing open the invisible vast power. The blazing flame, carrying an incomparable edge, approached Zeus's throat fiercely. Get out! Zeus looked a little flustered, hurriedly mobilized the vast power in his body, and a great coercion enveloped the past, trying to push Apollo back and keep him from getting close to him. Apollo's expression was indifferent, and the flaming sword blazed into the sky, shaking the entire world with an unparalleled wave of destruction. As the flames burned, the vast power was torn open inch by inch, approaching Zeus. Zeus gritted his teeth, the beating of his thighs became faster and faster, and the power that erupted in his body became grander. The two stared at each other icy coldly, and the boundless might blazingly impacted. Oh, it's only been a few days, and it's here again. In the depths of the underworld, Tartarus, the lord of the abyss, sighed impatiently, urging divine power to stabilize the turbulent world. Hades, who was sitting high on the throne, had a solemn look in his eyes and whispered, "Why does the power in Zeus feel so familiar to me? Maybe I used to be an old friend with you. Of course, you are no longer the you used to be, and he may not be him soon." Tartarus replied in a deep voice. Hades frowned. "It's so vague, do you think it makes you appear wise?" Tartarus said indifferently, "It's not that I want to say vaguely, but that I also lack enough understanding of you." Hades fell silent, with confusion in his eyes. In the earth and the dark night, surprised voices were also heard. The two ancient primordial goddesses seemed equally curious about the power in Zeus. Only the god of darkness, Erebos, remained silent. When several primordial gods shook, the duel in the sky progressed to the most intense level. In the eyes of Apollo and Zeus, there was monstrous cold and killing intent. The blazing fire of destruction, the invisible great power, seems to destroy the universe and the sky, destroying everything that exists, and will agree to give up. His strength is much stronger than last time, and he can exert the stronger power of that sword, and he always seems to be able to foresee my every move. If I continue to use this power, I am afraid it will disturb chaos. Eyes. What exactly is in Zeus's thigh? Why do I feel like a baby is beating his heart constantly, giving him infinite power, and if the burning sword continues, I am afraid it will really destroy the world. Both of them had worries in their hearts, but neither of them planned to stop, and looked at each other coldly. At this time Athena flew out and stood in the distance. Father, you just came back, why do you want to compete with Apollo? It doesn't matter if you compete, but Olympus has just been repaired, don't break the place. When she said this, she slowly walked to the area where the two people's power was impacted. Apollo and Zeus' faces froze. Although Athena is also the leader among the main gods, unless it is the original god, rushing to the core area of the confrontation between the two will be torn to pieces. Is she crazy? The gods below also expressed concern. For fear of seeing the beautiful and intelligent goddess of wisdom in the next moment, she will be crushed to ashes by the power of the god king and the god of light. But Athena was still light-footed and confident, and walked between the two of them as if nothing had happened. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. The expected death of Shangxiaoyu did not appear. As the gods watched, Apollo and Zeus seemed to have tacitly restrained their strength, allowing Athena to walk between them. The goddess of wisdom looked at the two of them with a smile, and said quietly, "Congratulations to Godfather for his return from trouble, and his expression is even better than before." Zeus snorted coldly and did not answer. He thought that he took such a big risk this time, and the power he gained would definitely be able to suppress all the gods. But I didn't expect that I couldn't beat Apollo when I just came back. This made him very depressed. Athena's congratulations made him feel insulted. Apollo smiled faintly. "Athena, you seem to have forgotten to congratulate me on becoming the deputy king of the court and marrying the beautiful Aphrodite." "Oh, congratulations to you too." Athena smiled. "What? Who promised you this?" Zeus roared with anger, with unwillingness in his eyes. "Deputy Lord of the Court of God, Aphrodite, you actually agreed to such a condition." In the empty temple, Zeus roared angrily at Hera. The gods later said with a face full of grievances, "I'm not all here to save you, or would I need to kneel in front of Apollo and suffer such humiliation?" "To save me," Zeus sneered. Standing on the throne, he said coldly, "Where can I need you to save me, Typhon? I have already made a plan to deal with him, it's all because of you that ruined all my plans." Hera gritted her teeth and said, "It's not because you never told me your plan. If you believed in me 1/10 as much as I believed in you, you wouldn't have made such a thing." Zeus fell silent, and after a long time he said indifferently, "I didn't tell you because of your lack of ability, but you would have mistaken me, isn't that the case now?" Deputy Lord of the Court of God, what a prominent position this is, not inferior to the status of Hades and Poseidon, I will give him this. And Aphrodite. He stopped halfway through. Hera sneered. "What happened to Aphrodite? Are you still going to marry her?" "Well, it just so happens that you are very dissatisfied with me, the Queen of Gods, so would it be better to replace her?" "Hera, you know I've never had such an idea." Zeus frowned. "Really not. I remember from the first day Aphrodite entered the court of the gods, you never gave up the idea of hitting her, but you were always concerned about her mysterious life experience and my obstruction, and you were unable to start." Hera's beautiful cheeks were cold. Staring outside, she whispered, "This is also the reason why I always wanted to marry her. Aphrodite and her child are too mysterious and weird. It would be a good thing for her to marry Apollo." "Perhaps as you say." Zeus was silent for a while. As Hera said, even he was quite afraid of Aphrodite and Eros. Otherwise, with his character, how could Hera really watch over him for nearly 10,000 years and fail to touch this most beautiful pearl among the gods? "What about the deputy lord of the court, what do you say about this position?" Zeus scolded. "Do you think this position is really important?" Hera asked back. "The foundation of all status is strength. If you let an ordinary god become the deputy lord of the court, would you be afraid of him?" "No, because he has no ability to threaten you. And today's situation has proved that even if Apollo does not have the name of the deputy monarch, he is the existence of Olympus second only to you, and he can still threaten you. In the end, this is just a false name. If you can defeat him, what if you are the deputy monarch? If you don't have the ability to fight against him, then sooner or later even your kingship will belong to him. So since he already has the strength to match the position of deputy monarch, it doesn't hurt to give him a title, at least it can stabilize him temporarily. Hera's words made Zeus ponder, and after a long time he nodded heavily. Okay, then I'll give him this title. Zeus gritted his teeth and turned his eyes to his right thigh. I didn't expect to combine his power and still won't be able to win Apollo, but this is also because he has not been born yet. After he is born on his own leg, all his power will be left in my body, and then I will become stronger. Seeing him staring at his thighs, Hera wondered, what are you thinking? Zeus suddenly said, there is something for you to do. What's up? During this time, I will have a good time with a mortal princess, and then you will find a way to kill her. What do you mean? Hera jumped up in anger. Zeus calmly said, I will release the news later. She was pregnant with my child when she died, and in order to prevent this child from dying, I sewed him into my thigh. Thighs, child? Hera stared blankly at his thighs. Life beating in the thigh, born from the thigh of Zeus. Dionysus. Recalling the scene of the battle with Zeus, Apollo's eyes were deep. In Greek mythology, Dionysus, the god of wine, is a very strange being. According to legend, he was the son of Zeus and a mortal princess, who was supposed to be a demigod. But before he was born, his mother was persecuted and killed by Hera. In order to save him, Zeus sewed him into his thigh to give birth, and finally washed his blood and became a real god. The strength of Dionysus is not the top among many main gods, but its status and influence are not inferior to Athena and Apollo in Greek mythology. The biggest festival in Greece is called Bacchus. And more importantly, although in most versions of Greek mythology, Zeus is the eternal king of the gods, the servant of fate, and the one who cannot be overthrown. But there are some exceptions. There is a version in which Dionysus, the god of wine, replaced Zeus and became the fourth-generation king of gods. This is the only recorded success to overthrow Zeus. Dionysus, the god of wine, what kind of origin do you have? Staring at the night sky, Apollo murmured. Putting down his thoughts, he walked forward. He came to the temple of beauty god. Yes, it's you. The little god of love, Eros, saw the figure approaching from a distance, and his face was filled with tension and fear. But he still stood at the door and said loudly, I know I have done something, don't embarrass your mother, punish me if you want to. Oh, do you really want this? Apollo looked at him lightly. Eros trembled, but still raised his face stubbornly. Even if you tear off my wings like Hermes did, I'm not afraid. Oh, you reminded me that your pair of wings are pretty good looking. Apollo chuckled and glanced at Eros's thin wings with a bad look. The little love god trembled even more, and there were tears in the corners of his eyes, but he still blocked the door. At this time, a soft voice came from inside. Apollo, don't scare him, he is just a child. Apollo looked over. Under the bright light, the goddess of beauty, Aphrodite, was wearing a long white robe and walked barefoot, which set off her slender and straight body. A pair of snow-white arms drooped under her chest, and her creamy smooth skin could be broken by blowing bullets. And under the fluffy and thick hair, the flawless and gorgeous cheeks are even more pleasing to the eye. The eyes, nose, mouth, and ears cannot find the slightest defect, only the eyebrows have a trace of sadness. And it is this sadness that erases the formula and mechanical sense of her perfect face, adding a third of charming charm. Looking at her for a while, Apollo said lightly, why do you think I'm scaring him? Deputy Lord of the dignified court, the god of light who can compete with the god king, will he care about a child? Aphrodite stared at him with intoxicating eyes. Is he a child? Apollo suddenly laughed, his golden eyes piercing the depths of time. Aphrodite's flawless cheeks suddenly trembled, and she forced a smile. Although Eros may be much older than Apollo you in terms of age, he is born with flaws, and his mind has always remained at a young age. Of course, he can only be regarded as a child. Well, I almost forgot my age. Speaking of which, taking my age to take the goddess Aphrodite, you, an ancient existence born at the end of the first generation of the gods, really suffered a big loss. Apollo sighed. If you really think so, you can cancel our engagement. Aphrodite's face was full of annoyance. No matter what kind of woman, being said to be too old, will always be angry. Why do you want to cancel it? It's not easy for Sister Artemis to marry you. It's not easy, Apollo said lightly. Yeah, Artemis is the best for you, and Hecate, Astraea, and even Athena, they are all very good goddesses, and they are noble and pure, and they are of extraordinary origin, who are not as wild as me. Born slut. Aphrodite's eyes were full of grievances, and she brought Eros inside. Standing still, Apollo looked a little surprised. Aphrodite seemed sad. After Aphrodite placed Eros in place, he walked over to her and said indifferently, if I remember correctly, you are also the daughter of the first god King Uranus. Although the way of birth is a bit unbearable, why is it? Do you want to say that you were born in a wild way? Hearing this question, a flash of unease flashed across Aphrodite's flawless cheeks. He quickly explained, I am the daughter of the first generation of God King. The 12 Titans have never admitted me. When they were in the Titan God court, they even thought that I was the remnant of Uranus and almost killed me until Zeus. They overthrew the Titans, and I was barely able to gain a foothold among the gods and enter Mount Olympus. Well, it's really not easy for you. Among the 12 main gods, you are the only one who has nothing to do with my father. The others are either his children or his wife. It will be soon. No matter what, you are also his son, and I am also his daughter-in-law. The huge court has always been a big family, and no outsiders can stand. Aphrodite said sadly. Apollo nodded, suddenly got close to her flawless cheek, and said slowly, but I'm more curious about your relationship with Eros and your relationship with Uranus. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.